Hello and welcome to Giant Bomb's 13th annual Game of the Year Spectacular. I am your host, Brad Shoemaker, joined by all of the Giant Bomb players assembled here for your entertainment. I'm going to go clockwise here on the screen. Ben Pack is here, Jason Daystriker, Jan Ochoa, Alex Navarro, Jeff Gersman, and Vinny Caravella. Welcome to all.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi.
Welcome to you, Brad.
Thank
It's
you.
a pleasure to be here.
Yes. You guys
Welcome
ready
to Brad.
talk about 2020's. I don't know if I specified. This is Game of the Year for the year 20 and 20.
Oh, and boy, what a year it's been.
Last year.
Yeah.
Yes.
What a
First time
season.
ever.
What a season.
Yes, what a year it has been. First time
Unprecedented.
ever. First time ever
Fucking
doing
nightmare.
Game of the Year here in January.
In the
So,
63 years we've been doing Game of the Year.
celebrating 63 years of excellence.
2020, a year so rotten, we said we can't even do Game of the Year in it. Let's wait till 2021.
That's right. I don't know about 2021 either, y'all.
It's okay.
He said it was going to be better.
I don't know, man.
I heard on the
I
news
never
that
said that.
2022 was going to be good.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Do I still have
Yeah.
to read the
It's
12
gonna be
books I said I was going to read this year? Or can I just... Okay. You're free.
So yeah, we're here to talk about 2020's games and dole out some awards after much deliberation. I guess we're going back to the classic format. I guess I would say we're just going to kind of go straight through some categories starting today.
Yeah. Everything old
Some
is
cats.
That's right. Yes, some hot cats here. So yeah, today's categories will be best looking game and best
Mhm.
dad.
Not best looking dad.
new. No.
No, but that could
Okay.
factor
Oh, I gotta,
in.
We might
all right,
have
I gotta
time.
change.
I have a
Dad.
question. I have a quick question. And I asked this off air, but I guess I should ask this on air now. Is best dad, is that like all definitions of dad, or is it like zaddy? Like Zam Zaddy? Like that? Does that count?
What does that mean? What is a
I need
zaddy? A clarification for this guy. It's the-
Wait, I think I got this. Is this are we talking about hot dads? Is that what we're talking
yeah.
about? Talking about damn dads? Damn
Yeah.
dads.
Oh,
Like so
Oh.
hot that you forget the word or the letter D, that you go straight to Z. Like Zam
Oh,
Zaddy.
So I would say that could be
Okay.
a contributing factor, but that is not the sole determination we are making with regards to these dads and their quality.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Alex.
I think it's also like a dad vibe, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
if you're giving off strong dad vibes in the game, we'll get there. Is that where we're starting, Brad? Where are we starting today?
Let's start at the start here. With,
Let's ease into the daddy.
Yeah,
Wait.
best looking game.
Mm.
But yes, all of these categories are open to interpretation. Hey, you know what? If you can successfully argue it, it counts.
Oh boy, don't, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to rename this category to best zaddy, best daddy, then make your case.
If you can win over the assembled panelists, then
We'll put Brett Gelman on the list and
Okay.
move on.
that's right. A couple, classic Game of the Year pieces of housekeeping. There will likely be spoilers throughout these proceedings.
Definitely.
That person was a dad?
That's right. Who would have thought? So beware of that. If there's any games you haven't played on these lists, we will try to give ample warning before we drop anything hot. But just be aware. Also, happy Martin Luther King Day to everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh,
I'm going to say. Shall we get started?
Yeah, we're doing this
Everybody else?
live for the first time.
Yeah. Also, yes.
Yeah.
Also, yes. Welcome to everyone watching this live for the first time. All right.
Yeah,
Now you
I
really
think
get to see how the sausage is made? I don't know. Like,
Yeah, we don't
all
really
those things
cut
we
off.
edited out, all the real raunchy stuff. Now you're definitely going to get it. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Doing it without a net. All right. Y'all ready to get into this?
I think so.
Hey, man.
All right. Well, we're starting, as I said, with the best looking game, which considers all aspects of the way a game looks. This is the merger of best graphics technical and best graphics artistic.
Yeah.
Oh wait, Brad, I have a point of order question. So we are
Vinny, the floor to Vinny Caravella.
so we are at the end of these categories. We'll have one winner, two nominees, two runners up. Is that correct?
Runners up. Yep, that's right.
Okay,
That's right.
Just want
Yes.
to double check there. All right.
Yes. All right. Best looking game. We've gone through and populated these categories, but these are not in any particular order. This is just the order that people thought of them. So Here we go. Here are the games we've got written down so far for best looking. Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, Ghost of Tsushima, Minecraft RTX, Doom Eternal, 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, Final Fantasy VII Remake, The Pathless, Demon Souls, Spiritfarer, Hades, The Last of Us Part 2, Microsoft Flight Simulator, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, Kentucky Route Zero, Astra's Playroom, Paper Mario The Origami King, Cyberpunk 2077, and the Dark Pictures anthology Little Hope.
So best looking here. So this is not if you're joining us for the first time and haven't been with us on the 13-year ride through what a best looking is, this is not graphics technical. This is not even artistic. This is just hey, look at this game. Hey, come check this thing out that's on the screen. This looks good.
These are
Right?
the video games. These are the video games. What you like putting your eyeballs on.
Yeah. The ones
It's
would
level
look good.
design, it's world design, it's character design, it's animation. It's the whole package.
Art,
Prettiest dad.
I
Wait,
feel.
yes, best looking dads.
best I feel. Yes, exactly.
Could well be a factor here. Yeah, I opened the floor.
I think that there are some, gosh, yeah. I think there are some fantastic looking games on this list. I don't see. I think Ghost of Tsushima is on the list of 3. I think that's a short list.
We're
game.
starting with that. Okay,
Wow.
all right.
Okay.
That is how strong. That is just how strongly I feel about that game being a top 3 looking game.
Yeah, I think that is
Of
a
art.
potential top 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that game is gorgeous, and it's only accentuated by I think they knew what they were working with when they made that photo mode, because it's like, I know the photo mode isn't necessarily what we're arguing here, but it's such a great way to view exactly how beautiful that game is. I spent so much time taking photos, just like changing filters, getting the weather effects in there, being able to change time of day, like all that shit.
It might be the best photo mode I've ever seen, actually.
I think so. Yeah.
You can like place like camera angles and lights and stuff, right?
Yep. You can
There's
change
a lot
time
you
of
can do.
day and weather and the weather. I mean, like, well, there's so many things you can talk about in that game, but like the weather effects in that game to me were something that stood out. There's an early duel you have, I forget, it's like the second or third duel, and it takes place on top of a hill with like a lightning storm happening. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but just the way the lightning crashes in the background and the way it looks and the light coming off of it as you're dueling this person, it was just the first time in that game that was like a jaw-dropping visual moment for me.
Yeah,
So you're saying Lightning
everything-
Crashes is one of the best songs of the 90s or the worst songs of the 90s?
Lightning Crashes fucking sucks, but
Okay.
So
Weird
I-
ending credits choice for that game, actually.
Yeah.
yeah, Ed Kowalczyk loves samurai shit. Anyway, the thing with that game, and I agree with all the points here, and I think it is in strong consideration for top 3, absolutely. My only beef with that game and the way it looks and the way it is visually designed is that it has one note, and that one note is just maximum pretty at all times. Like, there's not a lot, like, there is biodiversity in that world, and there is like like they get some, they invent some biodiversity that does not exist on Tsushima Island for the sake of making it a video game world. But like, there's nowhere you can go in that game to escape the relentlessness of its prettiness. Like, there's no corner of that game that is not drenched in wispy leaves and fucking nonstop like wind effects and fucking.
There's that village that gets burned out at the beginning of chapter 3 in the ice. That's like real fucked up looking.
Even that feels like it was drawn in a painterly way. To like it's still like, oh yeah, no, there's burned bodies everywhere and it's all fucked up. But God, it's just really pretty, you know.
Like we were playing the multiplayer last week, and you go through a couple of villages that just have like mountains of bodies on fire, charred up, and you're like, this is really nice. This is good looking torched up bodies. Like,
there's a visual poetry to these corpses.
Yeah.
And again, I don't say any of this as like this can't be here or it's like a huge knock against it. It was just the only thing that kind of like wore me out a little bit with the visuals in that game, is that I just felt like I was just getting inundated
This is too
with
pretty.
Yeah.
It's
sounds-
too
it has
good
to be
looking. It cannot win best looking.
The problem with this best looking game is it looks too good.
It kind of sounds to me like you're saying it's like heavily stylized from top to bottom, and it's just got that one style.
Yeah,
And
it is. And again, I think that style is delivered well. It's relentless.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I
And the other thing I'd say is I think their big like Kurosawa mode thing kind of misses the mark in terms of what that probably should have looked like if they were really going for that.
That's my fault. My bad. I'm sorry.
You fucked that up. So okay, so now the grudge comes out. I see where you're coming from. I see you, man.
You're just mad you didn't get a credit on that game.
So should we want to bold that for now? We want to start moving stuff around, or we're just chatting here?
I'm gonna say I'm gonna nominate the asterisk as our shortlist indicator.
Okay. We can all agree this is locked in.
Yeah.
At least for now.
For now.
Short lister for sure. Let's see.
We should probably
here.
specify that as far as Cyberpunk goes, we are talking probably about the PC version, right?
Oh yeah.
Safe to say.
Yeah.
But also I would say as someone who spent 60 hours with the PC version of that game, it does not belong on this list. Unless you really like the look of jittery bodies and all, like there's too much stuff going on that gets in the way of like the architecture. And also, I don't know, I think there are parts of that city that are really well designed and you look up and go, wow, but like it's almost like Ghost of Tsushima. What you're saying is like that's its one trick is like you can look it up and go, wow. And I don't actually think that those skylines or those areas look all that great. And I think the weird blurry gunk they throw over the entire screen, like it's just got this weird blur.
That's something that I turned off like almost immediately.
But like by default it wants you to see the game that way, and it just looks like it just looks odd. And so I think a lot of the stylistic choices they make around that sort of stuff really miss the mark for whatever they were. I don't know what they were trying to go for with that filter. It looks terrible. But yeah, you can disable it. But I just think like artistically and the stuff that they tried to do with like look at all the ads that are in your face and all this other stuff, like they don't have enough diversity on the advertising for that to work. And just the world feels I think the world, the look of that world contributes to like too many negative points, I think, in that game. That really kind of override
some of the ads
like
that have like YouTubers in them and stuff, and
really
that was really off-putting. Yeah, seeing like semi-familiar faces. It was weird.
Yeah,
anyway,
that is weird.
I like some of the,
I don't think it's a top 3 game. I think there is some nice stuff about it, and I think in a world where they clean that game up and like those are solvable problems for the most part, but I think even then I don't think I would call it a top 3 game.
I think there are 3 on here I'd pick over it. I think there's some stuff in there I like some of the cyber modification designs. I like the guys with their faces that are caved in that are like, that's who would do this.
Yeah,
this is,
the one guy with his caved in face is really fucked up.
that's bad.
Do you think that like the lines all over people's faces thing is maybe a little overused in that game though? It just feels like it's everywhere.
I don't think they use that stuff especially well. I think that stuff is, I guess overused maybe is the word, but I think ultimately there ends up not being enough variety of like cybernetic shit, which I guess if there are only a handful of brands of cyber eyes or whatever, that maybe they could have gone there. I will say I like the fashion in that game. I know people have knocked it for how dumb the main character looks. I love how dumb the main character can look. And later on, as you progress through the game, you start finding Johnny Silverhand's clothes. And so it's like you're kind of like cosplaying as Keanu Reeves by the end of that game, if you so choose, which I think is like funny for what they're trying to do with that game. But,
I have no problem cutting that game though. I don't think that's I don't know that it's going to hang on this list.
There it is. Got a first one.
Said it. All right, everyone, take a shot.
Bingo.
If I may,
straight vodka, baby.
I have removed Cyberpunk 2077.
Okay.
If I may, speaking of looking up and saying, wow, I did that all the goddamn time in the Final Fantasy VII remake. a game that I think is gorgeous. I was playing it on my standard PS4 and was constantly amazed. Some locations stick out in my mind, like Aerith's house, seeing all those flowers, being in the slums and looking up and seeing the top of the dome, or going up when you visit Jesse's family topside and look down for the first time and can see the slums from up there. I think that game was just consistently visually pretty amazing. And then the one other thing I would throw into the mix as visual standouts are the summons.
Yes.
The VR summons are some of the most beautiful summons I've seen in video games. Like watching Shiva specifically in my memory come out for the first time was like, this is going to sound corny as fuck, but it was breathtaking. Like, it was just the amount of particles coming off but the visual clarity of the summon itself was pretty fantastic. I think the game is a little one note in some areas, but I think there were a lot of just standout moments to me in that game that kind of, it's probably on my short list. I want to know what other people think, though.
Yeah, I could see it in the top 10. Like, it wouldn't be my personal top 3, but like even early on, like when is it? I think it's like right after the initial bombing mission, when you kind of get back to the town and just step off the train, and I think they might make you look up and you kind of see the underside of the pizza, the disc.
Yeah,
like that was a profound moment for me of like, they really like realized this world that means a lot to a lot of people, that like mostly existed in people's imaginations back then, because that game looked like shit, by modern standards. Like the visual treatment of the original Final Fantasy VII was pretty limited by technology, right? So like that was a really nice moment of like, man, they really like have like physically realized this world that people had in their heads for the last like 20 plus years. That was a cool moment for sure.
And they even kept that color scheme and stuff. Like, they used a lot of those weird PlayStation 1 grays and like rusty reds and stuff, especially when you're like under Hojo's lair and stuff and you're digging through the depths. Like, they kind of did a really good job of keeping the vibe of the original, and like you're saying, like recreating what people's memories of that game are rather than what the actual looked like.
I'm not going to disagree, because I think it is actually a stunning game visually. The only thing I would say to add on to that in terms of art direction and the memory of the polygonal Final Fantasy VII is I feel like we've seen that world re-rendered in the movies and stuff like that, and it has kind of come into that in real time. The Final Fantasy VII. What is the movie with
Advent Children?
Advent Children. Yeah, I feel like we've kind of just taken that as canonical now, and we just try to make that, or not we, but they have. Without that as a basis, I think that the leap would be bigger for me. But I think in terms of a good-looking game, it is certainly there. I just don't know if I would give them all the credit for going from Final Fantasy VII's initial release to today without some in-between steps. That's my point. That's it.
Good point, Vinny.
Sure. I have put an asterisk next to it, but we can revisit.
I think it's worth considering.
Yeah, it's a very good looking game.
Yeah, it is.
Astro's Playroom. Someone who wrote that. Can you honestly say that's a top 3 game here?
I wrote that down here so that I could say it probably does not hang in this category, but that the attention to detail in those PlayStation accessories that they rendered is nothing short of mind-blowing.
It is like it's so good.
Dude, like I feel like they must have taken like molds from the factory into a CAD program or something to make those things. Like that, like those accessories. You can zoom all the way in on them, and it's just like every fine detail you can possibly remember from those things is like pitch perfect. I mean, that is like, I'm not embarrassed to admit that's a huge part of the reason I love that game so much, is just like pretty much the entirety of PlayStation hardware history is like,
look at this PSP. I went out and I played a bunch of Astro's Playroom and then went into the little area, the labo, and started punching the PSP. I was like, you know what? And I went out and got my PSP. And you know what? The PSP, the original PSP, not the ones with the weird flippy lid, not the Go, but like the original metal ass chunk UMD tray PSP feels so damn good. It's so weird and dense and it's just got such a good feel to it. Even if the analog stick is not perfect, it reminded me that the PSP was really good in a way that the Vita never was. But
UMD should have been bigger.
That's right. I mean, this stuff will probably come up again.
Speaking of Advent Children, UMD should have been bigger.
It went even beyond that for me because I was sitting there ogling hardware I never had. Like not something I can go out in the garage and get, but stuff that's like, oh, I've never seen that model of the PS3 in person before, but now I can like basically get a sense of exactly what it was, right? Because it's that good.
Yeah. It made me want to, not the thing, but it had me reconsidering getting a 3D printer to print little stands for all the hardware to be like, wow, this stuff does look cool if you put it in like a little museum thing on shelves. Maybe I could like 3D print little stands from them all and then like light them because I want a thing that looks like this little museum here with all these Sony things. They took all the cords out though, which I guess you have to do, right?
I will say there's maybe actually an argument artistically for the way that they merged like PlayStation system UI and world design in some spots in that game that is like genuinely
totally. I think when you get to the end of every world and see that stuff, and just the worlds themselves, I think it's a really good showcase for the PS5 in a lot of ways. Like the forests and deserts, the beach sand and water effects and stuff are all really nice. I just don't think it's the top 3 game.
No. Like 90% of that game looks good, but not incredible. But it's those little touches are pretty damn cool. But I've said my piece, and now I will take it off the list.
All right. Let's see.
If you want to get rid of another one here, and I'll say my piece really quick. I threw the Pathless on here. The Pathless is the follow-up to Abzu. That was the name of that, right? The underwater game. Yeah. I actually think I slightly prefer the look of Abzu a little bit, but Pathless is that same kind of like, beautiful worlds. Running through it was really cool. A lot of the summit, like the bosses, are these great, large, like fiery creatures. I think that game is very good looking. I think the music that goes along with it adds a lot to the visual polish of it. I just it's not even in my top 3 for the fact that the levels are huge. Like there's tons of space to run around and explore in, which is cool gameplay wise because you do move around so fast, but that leads to huge areas that are just lots and lots of grassy field with not a lot going on in it. I think it's an excellent showing for such a small team, and it holds up to, or it's better than a lot of other smaller indie games out there, at least visually. But I think what Alex was saying about Tsushima is how I feel about that, where it kind of has its look and it commits to that look and doesn't really do much else. And it's a strong look, but it's not enough to kind of carry it through.
It's a really good looking bird in that game as well.
Really good looking bird, and you pet it, and when you shit. I got it. Note to self. When you pet it, you like turn it from dark to light, and it starts glowing, and then it starts rubbing its head on you, and that's very fun.
Aww.
But you don't think it belongs in the top 3?
No.
All right.
No.
Okay.
But for anyone looking for like a indie game to get lost in like a half dozen hours with, that looks great, check out the Pathless.
Yeah.
Okay.
As much as I like the game, it pains me to say it, but I don't think Miles Morales is going to make top 3 here purely because it is rooted on the PlayStation 4, and it's it's very much that city again from the previous generation. Like I think they do a ton of cool stuff with it being like snowy and set around the holidays with like Christmas decorations everywhere and stuff like that, and like the action set pieces look like that was definitely a moment firing up the PS5 and playing that game of like video games just kind of look like CG now. Like some of those set piece action sequences are really fucking good looking, but like, it did grow out of a last gen game. And I feel like you still see those roots there a lot. And like that, like, I don't know how you set a Spider-Man game outside of Manhattan. Like that's kind of required, I guess. But like, for me, it does still suffer a little bit from being in that exact same environment that it feels like we just played through.
There's 2 things I would say that I think maybe give it some worth consideration, though. I think you're right. It probably doesn't make top 3. One, I think the animation on Miles, especially when he is swinging around, and some of the new like combat stuff, is a huge leap over some of the stuff that they had in that first game. And also, just the world itself is a lot more lively feeling than the city was on PS4. Like I said, it's not radically different. It is roughly the same architecture, but like when you're down on the streets, when you end up, at ground level and you are interacting with people and there's stuff on the ground, it feels like there's more going on there than there was in the last game. For me, it's not just the fidelity. It's just like the way they apply that stuff to the way Miles moves like differently than Peter Parker, the way that, his swinging feels a little less like practiced and, kind of comfortable, but they make it fun. And I don't know, just like every time,
a different personality. Yeah.
Every time Miles is doing anything in that game, it feels like there is just like it connects in a way that I feel like the last one didn't. But
Sure.
But I also really like the last game, and you're right, it is totally rooted in a lot of the same stuff that the original Spider-Man was doing.
Yeah, actually, thinking back on it, like some of the new interiors that they made, like the Tinkerer's hideout and some of that stuff, is like really damn cool looking. Like a lot of those level designs are
cool, just nice shit. Indoor areas. Yeah.
For sure. It's just
for me, there's a lot of. Go ahead.
I was just saying, you do spend like 90% of the game on that city map.
Yeah,
that's true. There's a lot to be said, I think, for technical achievement as well. Like this runs, at 4K 60, with like RTX on. It's pretty amazing looking. Not only is it just what Alex said in the animations, but it's a lot of the technical aspects and the personality that they're just the different vibe that they give in this game over the previous Spider-Man. It just it feels different.
But it doesn't run at 60 with the ray tracing on, right?
They added a mode.
They added that mode.
3 weeks, a month ago, they patched in a 60 FPS with ray tracing mode. I tried it though, and it I ended up not playing it.
It's like a more of a super sampling, right? Like it's technically 1080 or something. Is that what they're making that cut instead?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
The world is less dense. There's less people.
I was going to say that's why I turned it off, because it reduces the pedestrian density to practically nothing, which just makes the city feel weird and empty.
I'm swinging around. I got too much to do.
Yeah.
I care about people.
If I New Game Plus that game, because I want the platinum, I probably will play it with that mode actually. But
because when I played it, it only had the 2 modes of like either you get 60 with no ray tracing or you get 30 with.
Yeah, this was a late edition, but I don't know. I give a lot of points for originality in this category, and like I would actually get rid of Doom Eternal for the same reasons I'm laying out for Spider-Man. Like,
sure,
it runs amazingly on every piece of hardware that game came out on, like even the old consoles. Like it continues to be wizardry that game runs as well as it does and looks as good as it does, but it's kind of those same exact aesthetic sensibilities again. It's kind of cyber heavy metal cover sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely doesn't look bad, but when we think about what we want to say about the way games look this year, that's not part of that. So I could see cutting Miles and Doom here. That's not.
I can think of at least 3 other games I feel stronger about.
I think I threw Doom on here just because I specifically wanted to shout out the particle, like cut into a dude with the chainsaw, and everything that flies out of that dude when you do that looks so good.
I really appreciate the Quake 3 style. Just all the power-ups are like neon glowing nonsense.
Yeah.
They don't even try to ground any of the video game stuff in reality. The game is just like giant yellow floating 1-up made out of like birthday balloons or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
But yeah, we can cut it.
Okay.
2 good-looking games, though.
Yeah.
It's
Miles Morales also does some pretty good glowy, and if you have that HDR, there's a lot of blue glowing, and the Venom stuff is pretty good glowy.
I would almost argue that maybe some of the character design actually suffers because they are so clearly built to emphasize the glow over all other things. I really did not care for that gang, the street gang with the purple on everything. Like
they just look like they fell out of Saints Row. They look like they fell out of Saints Row 4. It's just like, we're the cyber gang. Like,
Looks
The
nice.
game
though.
has been added to the list. That's illegal.
Unprecedented.
You can't do
No,
it.
no, it's a
Brad,
living
what are you
document.
doing?
That's right.
Living document.
Yeah, we don't talk about some other stuff.
Hey, I got
So
I got
put-
a game. Oh, sorry, Jason. Go ahead. I want to hear what you
I
have to say.
put Demon Souls on here, despite
Mm-hmm.
me not playing a ton of it. As much as I wanted to, I didn't get around to it. But what I've seen of that game is absolutely gorgeous. I love the reimagining of this world. I love the lighting. I love the models of stuff, the textures. Like, it's just, I don't know. That was the first game that I saw on running on PS5 that I'm like, holy shit, this looks really good.
If we did
Anyone
best
back
graphic
then-
technical, I
Yeah.
feel like that might take it. Like if it was purely a consideration
really?
of like engine features. Yeah, I mean, I'm harkening back to the GameSpot days when we actually did that award. Like I feel like if this was just like engine features, like fidelity or whatever, like that game might actually win.
But it definitely sets a mood in the world.
I mean,
Yeah, it's
it's more than just
it
technical.
still might win. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm
don't
curious
know.
if anyone
Art
else has.
design-
Does anyone else have the thought that, like, because I've seen mixed reactions, like not to the technicals of that game. I think everyone agrees that like the pure just like splash, impressiveness is there. But I know some people who love Demon Souls have not loved the way they redid some of the characters, or the way they redid some of the
Sure.
environments. Like I've seen at least the criticism, and I'm not a Demon Souls player, so please feel free to disagree with me on this. But I've seen the criticism that like the liberties that Blue Point took in redesigning some of the art for that game did not capture what they liked about original Demon Souls.
Hmm.
I don't think that I don't know. Maybe I chalked that up to them not being picky so much as purists, I guess.
Mhm.
Everything, like the comparisons that I've seen, they seem fine. Just the differences that they made, because it's a higher fidelity. They
Right.
have the opportunity to make things look a little more detailed. So I don't know how much stock I put in.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean,
people
it's
that- I don't know.
it's about us ultimately. I was just
Right.
wondering if
Yeah.
anyone had that feeling.
For me, it's been so long since I played the original game that none of that stuff stood out to me, so I can't really
Yeah.
comment on
That's
it.
where I am.
I think it's a game that probably gets into the finals for contention here. I think it's one that sticks around.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
It
Again,
has-
like, technically, I totally agree with you. I just feel like it kind of it's that again. Like it is very much a Souls game.
well, let's. I got a technical mind blower for you to challenge your best graphics technical assertion here. Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Ooh.
It's a good look, best looking thing. The world, the world.
The world kind of looks bad.
Have you taken a look at
sometimes.
the world lately?
I'm not
This
saying the
category
people.
isn't best world, man.
I'm saying the world, the world nature. It's,
From
it's
on
the
high,
first best looking
from up
category.
above all of the shit. It looks all right.
Microsoft Flight Simulator is amazing in what it does. It is novel. It delivers on a thing that probably shouldn't work by putting gigs and gigs of information and also using whatever wizardry they're selling for the cloud stuff. But it does work. What they're selling actually works, and you can fly. I have not been enough places to verify that these places all look the right way, but when you're flying over the parts of the country that I've been to and in some other countries, it is damn near amazing.
I think the parts of that game that look wrong are incredible too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing.
like that 8 Mile high skyscraper because somebody punched a number in wrong into the like Google Maps data or whatever it was.
I think the flights and then not to mention the planes. I mean, the fidelity of the interior of those planes. Again, not a pilot, but flipping all the switches and playing around with the stuff inside the plane, the way they look, it's everything I love about Flight Simulator and those types of games that come out in one package. Like the toggle switches just have that in some of those older planes have that weird 70s feel for the dashboards. It looks like people are putting cigarettes out on that dashboard, and it just everything feels and looks great in it. Again, the technology that is backing that thing, I think it's probably one of the most mind-blowing achievements in terms of what you can do if tasked with making the world flyable. So I think it's definitely up there for me.
The weather stuff too, like the fact that it is mapping weather data from the actual planet and creating, not necessarily a one-to-one recreation, but something that passes, the visual sniff test. Like when you're like, I've seen people being like, I'm on this airplane and I'm looking out the window right now and I'm playing this game on my laptop, and those aren't the exact clouds, but they're pretty fucking close. And that to me is just ludicrous.
Yeah, people who are flying close to hurricanes and stuff as they were kind of in the middle of the ocean, flying across the Atlantic Ocean, and it's like thunderstorming and scary, and like you should and in a plane that's not going to make it is terrifying and fun and doesn't have enough fuel to get there. It's silly, but it's fun. And then also, I don't know if you guys knew this, you could take that plane to space, low orbit, and just and descend.
Oh.
There's basically a developer mode where you just hold down a button for the altitude, and you'd think you'd hit the ceiling at the sky, but you see the curvature of the Earth, and you just your plane, you put it back into real mode and just drop that baby.
Wait a minute, Vinny. Did you really think that they were going to do a flat Earth dome on you? That you were going to hit the fucking barrier and you were going to be like, "It's true. It's not real. None of it's real."
No, Microsoft's part of the conspiracy. Bill Gates. We all know this. We all know this.
I definitely thought it would have a lower ceiling than it did as you start to go up and it changes to space and you start to see the Earth beneath you. It was like, why would you make any of these planes go this? I'm with you. Let's go. And that's a lot of fun too. So yeah, I think that.
Something I'll say for that game, this is maybe outside of the scope of this category, but they finally used the infinite power of the cloud for something cool. Which is like I think they stream all that geographic data to that thing, right? Like it's like my understanding is like to have an entire globe, the entire Earth as detailed as that thing is, would be prohibitive to have entirely locally on your machine. In terms of size,
they still try. They try their best to saturate
they'll fill up a hard drive. They'll
but yeah, it's wild. It's a wild thing.
I put an asterisk next to it.
That game just seems like a technical achievement in a lot of ways, outside of even just best looking. Like it's
Don't they have VR support?
Yes, they just added it recently, I think.
I thought so.
Okay. Well, should we just go from the top at this point?
What do we have? So should we read out what we have left for the benefit of audio listeners here?
Yeah. Stuff that does not have an asterisk next to it yet, which mostly means it hasn't been discussed. Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, Minecraft RTX, 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim, Spiritfarer, Hades, Last of Us Part 2, Kentucky Route Zero, Paper Mario, Dark Pictures, Little Hope, Late Breaking Edition to Destiny 2 Beyond Light.
Yeah,
I wrote that down when Vinny said HDR. Man, that game has some articles and stuff.
Yes.
The main reason I put it on here, though, is that it probably does not hang if this is all I can say about it, but it's those Braytech facilities, the Exo factory where they make all the robots. Like that shit looks so amazing. Like those are some of the coolest shooter levels I have ever seen in my life. Like just that future plasticky, like super over bright, pastel colored. You know what I mean? Like those
it is very Westworldy. It is definitely that.
I have not seen that show, so if they're just lifting that aesthetic wholesale from there.
It's Portal-esque. It is the good parts of the working parts of Portal, not the backroom parts. It is that white plastic.
Yeah, but just a little bit more exotic and out there, the way that Destiny always gets.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean,
I like it.
The rest of Europa, it's just kind of a snow planet. I guess there's not much you could say about that new stuff. It probably does not actually stay on here, but man, those levels look cool.
Yeah, so I'm honestly, when I look at the games we have asterisked, I am having trouble seeing any of the games left beating those.
No, I don't agree.
So if people have games they really want to bump onto that list, then we probably need to start thinking about that, I guess.
I'm going to pull Destiny up.
list.
I will bring up one of the games I nominated, which is 13 Sentinels: Aegis Rim. I love the art in this. It's some of the best 2D art that Vanillaware has ever done. But echoing off of what Alex had mentioned with Ghost of Tsushima, it is kind of just that the whole game, minus the tower defense portion, which is kind of like a 3D like reboot looking grid type of deal.
I kind of like the look of that in the quick look. I mean, it wasn't incredible, but for a tower defense game, it seemed interesting at least.
Yeah, and it's so funny, like compared in juxtaposition with the main game, where it's like beautiful 2D animation, 2D stills almost, because the animation is kind of lacking in the game. The tower defense part is a completely different art style, where it's the whole game they're saying like, oh, the kaiju are attacking, you have to hop in the sentinels, and you don't actually see like mechs in the game, which could kind of be a disservice because they just look like little pips and like little ships instead of like an actual mech, and like the kaiju are just like literally sometimes just little lights. But what does look good is when you extinguish all those lights and a shit ton of numbers pop up.
Oh yeah,
the part where the 2D the part where the 2D art style kind of falls apart for me is like the in between of the big moments in the game, where it's a beautiful still that like I would want like a screen cap of to like print out and put on my wall or something, because like when like the characters when they summon their sentinels, it's a really like amazing looking thing, especially they have like a cityscape of Tokyo, depending which time period you're in, and then like the mech just dumps out of nowhere, and then it's like a teenager and like their mech is there, and then like they swipe on themselves to like put their souls into the mech or whatever.
Oh, I thought she meant to remove their clothes. Oh.
We'll get to that eventually.
Okay.
Maybe not in the dad category, but eventually. But the parts where it's a bummer to me is that it's like in certain other Vanillaware games where it's a 2D sprite or like a 2D character walking on a 3D plane, and like they're just turning left and right, and there's no like animation to cover the turning or like the going on different planes. Specifically with one of the characters, Takatoshi, he falls to his knees a lot in either embarrassment or whatever, or he's so consumed with the yakisoba pan that he winds up doing like the Roman Reigns superhero uwa landing a lot.
Okay.
And like that gets reused a lot, and that's just one instance of a character reusing an animation, whether he's doing it because he got transported to a different timeline or because he's like, oh damn, they ran out of bread. So that's like one of the bummers of the game. That being said, some of the best representation of yakisoba pan I've ever seen, because it's the first time I've ever seen yakisoba pan, which is just noodles. It's a noodle sandwich.
Oh yeah, Vanillaware does food like nobody else.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yakuza.
Yeah, pretty good.
But it's the in between parts where like the animation kind of falls apart for me. And some of the other extraneous characters that don't really matter, they're in the foreground or background or whatever, they're just silhouettes. Like there's not as much attention to them, and I guess there shouldn't have been much attention to them. But like there's moments in the game where it's like, damn, this shit looks good. But more than enough other moments though that kind of balance it out of like, nah, it looks like I'm watching a 2D book go by. Yeah, 13 Sentinels,
really
Aegis Rim. Good sandwiches. Very strong art style. Very brave with the tower defense part also. But the superhero landing poses, not for me.
Too many.
I mean, he probably does it about as much as actual Roman Reigns does. So,
well, okay, so let's put an asterisk on it then.
There you go.
For Roman
Big
Reigns,
dog.
the big dog, tribal chief. But goodbye, 13 Sentinels.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, he wanted to say what he wanted to say.
I
sandwich
realized
is
that's where that was going. Okay.
Um,
Can somebody
we talk-
make a pitch?
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say for Dark Pictures.
Sure. This is everybody knows what this game is. This is the Until Dawn, folks. This is it is more of that refined. It is that facial tech, that kind of striking not hitting the uncanny valley, like on the other side of the uncanny valley, which is I think an achievement on its own. It doesn't elicit those terrible these are not humans. So I think it's a more of a technical thing than anything. It's just the characters and the models look extremely good. That tech, they have refined that tech. I think they get away with it because they have pretty limited worlds. They don't have to render that much outside of these characters. They're the main draw. But I think it's an achievement, and I think they do really well by it. It's one of their main draws, and it works within the game as well. It is because it is such a character-driven thing that they put that much focus on it. I don't think it's going to make the top 3 here, but I think giving the credit to them for that continuing to make that tech look amazing is why I put it on here.
Fair.
Okay.
I would probably argue something similar for Last of Us Part 2. We all know that Naughty Dog makes extremely good-looking games. They always do it. And, The Last of Us 2, I think, is, at least from a technical standpoint, probably the, just most complete thing they have made as far as visuals go. I also really didn't like looking at that game because a lot of it is intentionally very unpleasant. It's bombed out apocalyptic environments, just horrible fucking monsters, people who are just pissed off and angry at each other all the time. And they're really good at animating that stuff and making it, conveying that stuff through their visual engine. I just, I also completely tapped out of that game long before I got to the end of it. And so I haven't seen every part of it. I can't necessarily speak for it in totality for the sake of this category. I just, we know Naughty Dog makes really good games and good looking games, and they made another really good looking game.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, that moment early on when you were on your way to Seattle, it cuts to you, to Ellie and Dina on a horse riding through basically an overgrown jungle kind of environment, heading to Seattle was the first moment where I was just like, well, this is the best looking game ever made. Yes, it is largely on a technical level. I mean, but holy shit, man. Especially on a base PS4, holy crap!
I think their level design also on the kind of creative front works as well. I think they're their post-apocalyptic stuff. I would not cut this yet. I think The Last of Us Part 2. It is the game that I call my wife in to look at, and say, and she's like, "Holy shit!" It's definitely one of those holy shit. This is where games are, and again, I think. In competition with stuff that is PS5 and Series X, it's an amazing achievement that they pull that off. On the swan song for the last generation. It's near unbelievable to look at what they.
I would say it looks as good or better than anything on the new consoles so far.
The only reason I can believe it, as far as what it was doing on that hardware, is because I heard the sounds my PS4 was making while I was playing it. And have you ever heard a console ask for death? Because I heard it. I heard it underneath the fan, just kill me.
Yes.
Yeah. I think The Last of Us Part 2 contributed to my PS4 bricking because I revisited it recently just to look at it, and it kind of did a hard lock on me, and then it sounded like it wanted to die, and then it did.
Yeah.
I think they have also mastered the use of performance capture like nobody else. I mean, I basically consistently forget that I'm watching a video game when I'm watching those cutscenes. It just feels like I'm watching actors play parts,
I think there's a lot going on in Last of Us Part 2 that makes it, I think, one of our something we should talk about in the top there. And I think artistically, technically, the performance stuff. I think there's a vision, a realized vision there that really is striking.
Yep, I agree.
Hey, can we talk about Hades for a second?
Sure.
Because I absolutely love the character design in that game. The way they made the gods look. They kind of took their own spin on it, while also kind of remaining faithful to interpretations from across the years. I like the way everything else looks in that game. I don't think it makes the top 3 just because there's not... I don't know. It's a game that looks good, and for its art style, I think serves the gameplay very well. It's just nothing to super write home about.
I do think there is
too much visual novel for me, I think.
I think there is something worth at least acknowledging that for once, Supergiant went out and finally made a game that was horny.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Because you
like
demanded
actively horny.
It's cool to see them branch out that way, you know, because I've never really thought of Supergiant games that way. You know, I love the character art in all those games, but I've never like been like, oh, while looking at them. And this time I found myself going, oh, more often than not.
How much fire is what I'm saying.
Dude, I finished Fire. I like the punk rock dog dudes and everything, but I wasn't exactly horny for them. That's all I'm saying.
That's a you problem. I don't know.
Boldy.
How much is Hades horny, and how much is fans of Hades mapping their horniness onto
Hades is 100.
Hades is horny.
Okay.
Hades
The more you talk to 100%. The more you talk to characters and the more you learn about their relationships, like everyone in that hub world is horny for somebody.
They're all doing
if you
it.
talk to them enough.
Even the skeleton.
Yeah, but that
Especially-
pantheon, the source material is also very horny. So
Yeah.
I think,
I get it. Some very hot characters in that game. I get it.
Yeah, I love the way Hades looks, and I think the way that they have drawn a lot of those characters for the I was gonna say cutscenes. I think that stuff looks great. It's not a top 3 game.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Supergiant consistently has some of the best art in the industry, but
that's a tough one to lose. That's
it's the kind of it's the kind of game that they make, and I'm not going to knock them for making that kind of game again, but I would love to see something not isometric from them at some point. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know. They're so good at it.
I know what you're saying,
are.
but I don't know if I agree.
I mean, it's fine. I'm just saying purely in the context of what are the best looking games of the year. I mean, like,
Sure.
I'm very familiar with that kind of style of game. You know, obviously they've swapped in like ancient Greek stuff for, some of the other stuff they've done before, but it's the same like format or presentation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I think my favorite parts about the way that game looked were the static images of characters when they were talking to you, and you look at those and you're like, man, this is great art.
It's great.
This is great.
It's a combination. Like anytime Dionysus popped on the screen, and he just looks great. He looks like a sleazebag, and you hear the like sound of a party happening whenever he pops on the screen. It's just like aesthetically, like the voice acting is great. It's one of those things where like Hades is a game that's so frequently greater than the sum of its parts, but drilling down to any of the individual parts, specifically I think the visuals more than anything else, you kind of start to be like, yeah, it's in a vacuum, it looks good, it doesn't look incredible.
Well, I don't know that I have anything bad to say about how it looks, but I just when I look at the other games on this list and think about the way those games look, specifically narrowing down to that and not party noises and voice acting and stuff, which is all amazing. I just don't think it stays.
It all works in concert, but like you said, there's I think the individual pieces maybe don't just like completely stand out in a glaring way the way that some of these other ones do.
I think all right, I'm going to add one more thing for Hades, maybe convince you to put it back on the list, though I'm not sure it does make the final 3 here, but with all that great artwork, I think the rooms are still very readable, and they've done a great job with the palette and the color palette. With all the stuff going on, I think the enemy attacks are very readable. I think what's happening, the artwork makes that game more enjoyable because everything is very clear and stands out against the palette, which I think must be very hard to do. As someone who's colorblind,
when it gets so hectic like that.
I mostly agree. I did have some trouble in the fire area.
I was going to say the exact same thing. Yes,
some of the visual, because that's the first and really the only area where they introduce like a lot of enemies off screen that are lobbing things at you, and it's sometimes hard to tell, especially when you're starting out. As you play more, you get the hang of it, like where the fire begins and where it ends, and where you're going to take damage from walking. But I think mostly I agree with you, Vinny.
Yeah, I found myself taking damage occasionally off that lava that I didn't like. I could kind of gauge the distance of my dash and like end up in a spot where I didn't think I would, taking damage. Yeah, I get what
you actually reminded me of one more thing I do want to shout out about the visuals in that game is the game does such a good job of making dingy, shitty awful looking underworld areas that you really want to get out of. And then the first time you make it to Greece, and it's just this beautiful, grassy, flowery, like as you're approaching, it's Persephone, right? I'm not.
Mom.
Yeah, as you approach Persephone's house for the first time, and it just looks like a normal place. It looks so beautiful compared to what they did. That makes it like the next time I went back into hell, I was just like, oh yeah, this looks so shitty. I don't want to be here. I want to make it back out.
All right. Tough cut.
Hey, it's where the tough cuts happen.
Yeah, this is where the
How about Grand Blue Fantasy Versus?
Oh, it's real good.
It is a real good looking game, and I think they've done a fantastic job of translating, Grand Blue into a fighting game. I think like Arc System Works has done better though. I think they've done better with Dragon Ball. I think they've done it with Guilty Gear. I think this is fantastic looking, and it's some of the best like 2D animation, this year. But I don't know. I don't know if it makes it into the top 3.
You're saying it meets
agree.
their general baseline standard, but
Yeah.
it does not necessarily go above and beyond what you would expect from them.
Sure.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean,
same.
they came out of nowhere and won this category, 3 years ago, something like that.
Like 2, I think.
But it was
Didn't
kind of with the exact same style, right? Like they have kind of been
more or
doing
less.
it.
I mean, yeah.
More or less.
And
Less
I think that this game looks fine. You look at it and go like, it's ArcSys doing what ArcSys does. Awesome.
Yep.
But it's not, I don't think it's quite, I don't think it's more than that in a way that like Dragon Ball can be sometimes.
Yeah.
And Dragon
Yeah,
Ball has the benefit of a more fantastical license to work with in some
I
ways.
love looking at it, and they've done some like fantastic things with like some of the super moves, like
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
one wrestler and her finishing move where she just does that press on somebody, and the ref comes out and he starts counting 1, 2, and
Very good.
the counter is going up. It's so good.
And it does the thing where if it's a kill move, they get to 3, and if it's not going to kill, they get out at like right under 3. It's just a lot of great attention to detail, and in the story mode too. Just give that a quick shout out. I played through a good chunk of that, and they have some really cool design in there for like fodder enemies and shit that they don't really frequently use again, but they just keep that ArcSys standard throughout the whole package. Like they could have done a very cheap visual novel story, but they made something interesting.
I love the hand drawn nature of it, where it's a little sketchy around the edges and everything. It's a good package for sure.
All right.
As an Apple Box connoisseur, best Apple Boxes in the business, baby.
Yeah. Best Apple Box, best wrestling game, weirdly enough.
Yeah, but we can cut it. I still want to give it its due.
Sure.
It's props.
I'm torn. I'm the one that wrote Minecraft RTX on here, and I'm torn about it.
So let me ask a question about it, because I know it looks good because I've seen videos like everyone else, and I'm sure some of you have played it with it extensively. So is it that they did something really inventive with the technology, or is it simply that the technology applied to that game and like its assets looks amazing?
Very much the latter. Like it and that Quake 2 thing they put out for free are basically the only fully path traced games on the market right now. Like we're 100% top to bottom, but because of that, and because actually, maybe it is more than that, because this is a case where the nature of Minecraft allows you to play with and experience what that tech does in ways that games that are much more static could not, if that makes sense. Like
Yes.
you can,
Sure.
you can place light sources, you can like bust holes open in walls, you can do stuff that shows off what that tech does and means, like you could not in other games. So I guess it is more than just it looks cool on top of Minecraft.
Yeah, there's some stuff where, and again, some of it's going to depend on which texture packs you install.
Yeah,
also,
that's a weird aspect
you know,
of that game.
yeah, but I had a moment in that game when I first started playing after the RTX stuff came out, and where I had built my little cave. I was like, okay, well, this is my first area. Build my little cave, put some doors on it, get going. And the doors had, little holes for windows on it. And it just so happened that I had positioned my doors so that when the sun rose, the sun would shine right in through there. and just the light it cast through the little holes in the doors, and it created a realistic path of light onto the ground, and just like you could see a little bit of that light in the air, like dust in the air type stuff. Just fucking incredible.
Yeah, I get butterflies. I get butterflies looking at that stuff because like that's basically the future of computer graphics. Like that's where games are going. We're not there yet, but everything is going to be that in like 10 years.
Yeah, it's super, super, super impressive. In ways that like, yeah, like, and then you get that moment and you're like, okay, well, like it just led to me like, I didn't want to play in creative mode, which would have made this a lot easier. But, I got to a point where like, okay, well, I'm going to dig my little cave. I'm going to dig a little bend in it here so I can see what the light, okay, so I'm just going to shine here. And then as the day moves on, like, it got to a point in that game where, you can really tell the time of day. Just you could be out on flat land and you can tell the time of day just by looking at like where the reflections are hitting, where the sun is shining. Like you get a golden hour in that game almost as the sun sets, where you're just like, it's fucking crazy.
The first time I played that thing, I found a cave on the bank of the ocean, basically. So there was like sand outside, and I went in the cave, and like caves in Minecraft are dark, right? But I go in there because the sun was shining directly on all that sand outside the cave. Entire inside of the cave was like had this like subtle yellow glow like all the way across it because light was just like bouncing off of the sand into the cave. It's like shit you have not seen in games before. It's cool as fuck, but it is very tech demo-ish.
Yeah. Well, I mean, whatever. It's also like built on the back of like an amazing video game, like Minecraft. Like, yes, it's tech demo-ish, but also it's Minecraft.
I mean, like I because it's Minecraft, I was able to make a creative mode world and just play with stuff for hours. Like I was stacking glass blocks on top of each other just to look through them and see what it did. Created a fisheye effect. Like it literally, I was looking at a fisheye version of Minecraft, like all warped and curved because that's how it was bending the light through the glass. Like it's so cool. But
it's cool as hell.
It is very technical. I don't know that like there's not a strong like authored art design aspect to it compared to most of these games do have that. So I don't know.
I think that's my only criteria for saying maybe it doesn't belong here is in the end is just that like there are other games on this list I think I more aggressively want to reward for the way that they presented their art. Like I think it is an incredible tech demo, like you said. And it seems like it's genuinely impressive, but I think there's other stuff I would rather reward on here.
I can see it. You kind of
I can see it too.
Kind of have to make your own cool looking stuff in that thing.
Yeah. Going into this, that was a game I thought for sure would make our top 3, but as we've talked more about the other games, I'm like, I
am completely with you. I also thought it would be top 3, but this is a contentious category.
It sounds like everyone needs new graphics cards, I guess. So
that's right.
Any objections? Any objections? Should I cut it?
Cut it. Looks great.
I think so.
Go ahead.
I cut it.
All right.
Only 3
but in
things
some
left
ways, that is the best looking game of the year.
Yes.
In some ways.
Most future ass looking game of the year for sure.
I got one that's the opposite of Minecraft RTX in terms of why it is one of the best looking games of the year, and that's Ori and the Will of the Wisps. That the art in there is not just from computers doing their damnedest computations. That art in there is humans. This is the John Henry.
I see. Okay,
yeah,
right.
This is they're digging a tunnel by hand, and it is amazing. And Ori and the Will of the Wisps is another one of those. Look at this game. Just soak this game in. It is gorgeous.
3 games on this list that I bugged the hell out of my girlfriend to look at were Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima, and Ori. Like those were the 3.
Oh my goodness!
Ori is a game that is like a painting when you're looking at it, but then when it starts moving, when you start like moving at max speed and the game starts moving with you, it's incredible. That game in motion is unlike any other 2D games I can think of that come to mind.
I rolled it. Yeah, I'm sorry. I rolled into this category ready to declare Ori the best looking 2D game I've ever played. Like it is stunning. I just finished it last night. So I saw everything top to bottom, and it's like. Also, if you haven't played the original game in 5 years since it came out, you should put those games side by side because, like, in my mind, when I first played the new one, I was like, it looks like that, but maybe a little bit better. I actually went back and side by sided them. Like, it is fucking night and day. Like
Oh,
the old game
damn.
looks like nothing against them, but it looks like shit compared to the new one. Like,
Damn. Wow.
it is the previous game was like actual 2D. Like, it was like, from what I can tell, it's like literal like hand animated 2D assets, and this game is fully 3D. So you get the benefit of like incredible lighting all over everything, like the underground
so
zone,
amazing.
subterranean zone where everything is dark. Like there's a zone where everything is dark, and if you go outside of the little spots of light, you die in like 3 seconds. And the way they use that to just like illuminate sections of the level that you are safe to go to is like so striking, man. They use all that text so well. It's incredible.
And I think it gets away from the things we talked about with Tsushima, where it is not pretty for the sake of pretty. It is not the this we could just make everything so gorgeous. I'm like, look at all these colorful plants. I'm like, this is just pretty. It is the depressing and a lack of beauty is rendered so well. The kind of desolation in certain areas. It's heartbreaking. It really is.
There is a profound melancholy that hangs over that whole game, and yeah, they represent some of that stuff. And that game is a real punch in the gut in spots.
My only knock against it was with HDR, Ori is almost too glowy sometimes. I had to turn Ori down. You lose some definition because like Ori is just a glow ball, like it's just a giant glow thing. So I had to turn actually some of it down, but man, that game is gorgeous.
I think Ori being a glow, just a pure glowing white spot, is very gameplay relevant because that thing gets so busy a lot of the time. There's so much shit going on that like it's good shorthand for where am I in this mess of particles and whirling shit to just have a little white spot moving around that's easy to kind of catch your eye.
Sure, but too glowy.
Also, sure. For what it's worth, they got that thing running at 4K 120 on the Series X and PC.
Wow. Yeah,
that's obviously not every platform, but like that's a pretty impressive thing.
And that goes a long way. I think, because you can 6K it also. I think
it sampled 6K. Yes,
it doesn't because it did not run amazingly well at launch, right? That was especially on Xbox One.
The console version,
it was bumpy.
It had issues at launch for sure, but I like I said, I just played through it over the last couple of weeks, and it is perfectly fine now. That game makes me wish 3D TVs were still a thing because there's so much depth in those. Like I've never seen such really like tasteful use of foreground objects, like things that are like right up in the camera, like super close to your face, that kind of come in and out of the scene, like the just the depth, like most parallax of all time, probably. Like there's a lot of depth, and for being a 2D game, there's like an incredible amount of depth in the level design. Like that is. I'm sorry.
I was saying it kind of seems like this is one that's gonna be in the final discussion.
It has to be.
I think so.
I like
top three.
top three. Yeah.
It is a potential winner of this category to me for sure.
Okay,
like the artwork is also very, very good. Like the character designs are amazing. The detail in that stuff, not just the kind of technical aspect. It's just really it's a stunner.
The first game did this too, but it is really good about doing something that Vinny shouted out for Hades, which is the visual hint system. Just really good use of color. Of like, okay, I know that this is an upgrade. Like I recognize this upgrade here. It does some stuff where like there was a puzzle where you had to like hit certain things in order, and the like tomes in the back, you start to realize like the tomes in the background are clues and stuff. Like it's not a game where there's like a hint system that'll drop down and be like, you can do this to do this. They do it all within the way the game looks and like the visual clues they've peppered in.
Ooh, Ori.
So we got 3 on here we haven't starred.
I threw on Paper Mario, Origami King, last minute before we started here. I think this game nails its aesthetic. It totally looks like a diorama. You know, it's like one of those things where you feel like you can reach out and touch it. And I think they take that theme and play with it even further. You know, they do a lot of really fun stuff where they're breaking the fourth wall. Like you're literally throwing confetti up into the air to cover up holes that have been created on the ground so you can traverse it. You know, I
You're
think it's
ripping like background pieces to kind of
Yes.
reveal, stuff in the further background.
I think all that stuff is great. I think as far as Switch games go, it's probably one of the best looking like first party Switch games I've played. Especially after I was kind of disappointed by Pokemon pretty bad last year.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to shout. In my mind, it was like, oh yeah, this could be like a top 3 before I put it on there. But after talking about these games, I do not think it makes the list. Even though, like, even the water stuff, like there's a lot of really interesting, different, like all the different areas have very different visual aesthetics to them. And the one thing I did want to shout out were the bosses. Just like they made it that fighting a stapler is visually interesting, or like fighting a pair of scissors
or a rubber band.
Yeah, but I think overall it doesn't make the cut.
I really like its aesthetic. It was one of the most pleasing games to look at this year, I think. For me, I'm not sure if it makes top 3, but man, I really like being in that world. That was cool.
Looking at screenshots of this game is making me realize that the default art style for Paper Mario is basically NES manual. It's like the way the characters work. The fallback, like the normal, the non-evil characters in this game look like they came from the margins of a Super Mario Brothers 3 manual or something. But then having all these characters reimagined in origami style is like a really fun, cool contrast to that.
Yeah.
Like, if this wasn't such a contentious category, I could see this hanging. But it's starting to look pretty cutthroat here.
Yep.
Yeah, and I also think it is an amazing looking game, and I really enjoyed it. But there's also, we've seen this a couple of times. Like there's Tearaway, which is an amazing looking game also, and does Paper Mario is doing some of what Tearaway did, maybe even sometimes not as well. But Paper Mario for creativity also gets a couple of bumps. It's so vibrant. Like Paper Mario is just a popping game. But yeah, I don't think I couldn't say I would put it above 3 games on here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So sounds
Let's
like that.
Go ahead and get rid of Paper Mario.
Oh boy.
I have made the cut. Paper Mario.
So
we have fun
the last two that are on here that have not been starred are ones that I put on here. Let's start with Spiritfarer. I think if you were to put that side by side with something like Ori of the Will of the Wisp, Spiritfarer does not maybe rank as highly, but I really appreciate what that game is doing with its hand-drawn kind of looking art style. The background art in that game is excellent.
That's some of the best 2D animation in the business.
So good.
They had Sundered,
really good.
Jotun. Yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful games.
It looks awesome. Like I think that they evoke so much with what are fairly simple seeming environments. Like they get wring a lot out of that stuff. The character art is incredibly expressive. It has some of the best hug animations I've ever seen in my life. I wanted to hug literally everything that I could. It's really impressive, and I think that if it were not up against some of these other heavy hitters, I would absolutely say it should be in the top 3. But I'm not sure that it quite knocked me down the way some of these other ones did visually. There are other categories I feel strongly about.
I had no idea this was the Jotun Sundered studio. Wow.
Yeah.
Like a hell of a swerve for them from their kind of heavy metal stuff.
Yeah, they made a really affecting farming game about acceptance of death. It's kind of amazing.
Oh boy.
That game is so the animation in that game is so good.
Top flight.
So good. Yeah.
The other one is Kentucky Route Zero, which so this is, I think, the game I would say maybe does the most with the least this year, which is to say that it is not a game that is trying to knock you over with sheer, volume of effects and crazy shit. But for a game that was kickstarted in 2011 and released its first episode in 2013, I didn't play really most of those episodes until this year when the console edition came out. And every chapter, every interstitial bit of that game feels so distinct and so its own thing and striking in its own way. while still feeling like a coherent work. Like it all kind of fits together into the larger narrative that they are telling. But like every single scene in that game is like arresting in a way that a game that is like basically running on, 7-year-old technology probably should not be able to pull off. But I was constantly just sort of blown away with what they managed to do, just like style wise in that game, from moment to moment.
Okay.
Well,
But did anyone else play it? Is the thing? Did anyone else like get into it and have the similar feelings?
I didn't finish it, but I got into it this year because of the what was the big release called? The like definitive edition,
the TV edition.
TV
edition. Yeah. But I didn't finish it, but I really enjoyed what I played of it. Like I like that aesthetic a lot.
Yeah, it looks cool.
But am I going to get any support on it? Is the question. It seems like
that's why I was waiting for somebody else to chime in, but it sounds like
this is a tough list.
Look at the rest of these games. I don't know, man.
Yeah,
I know.
I feel like
it bums me out a little bit because I do think that they really did accomplish something with that game's visual style, and it's not that no other game looks like it. Like they are, there are absolutely other games you can point to and be like, well, this is of a kind, but it's just, I don't know, like there just isn't a scene in that game that I did not find striking and memorable. And I think that, having a complete through line, especially a game that you spent, 8 years making and, disparate chapters and all those different pieces, like having that all come together the way it did, I think is really impressive.
I can see it.
But apparently it does not hang.
Yeah. All right, we have gotten down to a short list of 6. I'm gonna move. We take a quick break here before we come back and start making some tough cuts here.
Sure. Brad, why don't you read it? Why don't you read it down?
Yes. The list is coming out of the break. The short list will be Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Ghost of Tsushima, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Demon Souls, Last of Us Part 2, and Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Oh, jeez.
Oh boy.
Good looking with a lot of strong support here. So we will take 5 and come back and figure it out.
Good.
All right, we're back and ready to fight. Roll up your sleeves.
Lights out.
The winner of the best looking game category. Once again, the short list from the bottom up this time. Microsoft Flight Simulator, The Last of Us Part 2, Demon Souls, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghosts of Tsushima, Ori and the Will of the Wisps.
Oh boy,
those games look good.
Yeah, they're good looking games.
I like
It's
this.
interesting, because we're at it was a year of changing over consoles. So a lot of people pushing last gen to its maximum strength, which we see in like Last of Us and Final Fantasy VII Remake, and then like some new stuff with the Demon Souls and some indie stuff. It's a good spread.
Oh boy, where do we start?
I like the top 3.
I also like the top 3.
I like the physically.
I would actually.
And Final Fantasy.
I would actually really love it if we all just kind of went around and said, "What are our 3?" And this is non-binding, of course. Just
I was
curious.
trying to resist doing that, but that would certainly be the most direct way.
Let's do it.
My personal top 3 here are The Last of Us, Ghost of... Well, yeah. Okay, yes, I'll commit. Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima, and Ori are my top 3.
Okay.
I'm Ori, Ghost of Tsushima, Final Fantasy VII.
Same as Ben.
Oh, I really love Final Fantasy VII, but that Rat King and Last of Us Part 2 looks real gross.
Oh, God.
The infected look real bad. In a good way.
It looks real bad. Okay.
Because I haven't played Ori and the Will of the Wisp, I'll say Ghost of Tsushima, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and The Last of Us Part 2.
Okay. I will go with Ori. I will go with Tsushima, and I'm going with Flight Simulator.
Ooh.
That is where I am at as well. Demon Souls also almost made it in there, but yeah, Ori, Ghost of Tsushima, and Flight Simulator, I think, are the 3, which I think means no one actually chose Demon Souls.
Well, Vinny hasn't gone yet.
Vinny
Oh, right.
Go on.
Ori, Last of Us Part 2, and Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Okay.
That's my 3.
That does appear that no one has chosen Demon Souls.
Yes.
Yeah.
That helps a little bit.
Oh, that's an easy cut.
It was like a lot of support for Ori and Ghost and a moderate amount of support for Final Fantasy VII and Last of Us.
I
And
thought for
Microsoft
sure, Brad, for some reason, I thought for sure you were going to come in here and say Demon Souls won this category hands down.
Again, I think like technically, probably it would, or damn near close to that. But I don't know. It's just like it looks like a From game, you know. In fact, it looks like that From game that came out 11 years ago. It's not a bad thing or anything. It's just like,
Looks like
largely,
looking.
yeah. But, you know, largely artistically, we have seen that game before. Even if they did reinterpret some things here and there, it looks like that.
It's not to be said that like a remake could win this category, but I feel like this more than any other category maybe is something about making a first impression. Like even if it's not the first screen of the game, maybe it's in the first couple hours, but I feel like all of these games have a moment relatively early on where you look at it and you're like, holy shit, this is incredible. And I think it's only added to that if it's something you've never seen before, or at least like at a level you haven't seen before. Like I've played plenty of open world games that are pretty, but Ghost of Tsushima like just hits you different at certain times. Like Ori and the Will-O-Wisp kind of looks like that first Ori game, but like the first time you're really moving along and everything hits just right, it's visually interesting and stunning in a way. Like Demon Souls to me was like I didn't play it, but I played the original one. I love the original one, but watching you guys play it, it was very much like, yeah, this looks really, really nice. I've seen this before, and this is the nicest I've seen it before. But
Sure.
It's not like these other ones.
There's definitely something to be said for them putting out a version of that game that runs at 60 FPS. Like that's awesome because people who like those games sure do like playing them at high frame rates. But you know, like I talked about this on the Bombcast a little bit, but there are spots where you could definitely see that it's still that old PS3 game running under the hood. You know, with the way that some of the NPCs move is pretty robotic in a way that sort of stands out in a game that looks as good as it does otherwise. So
right. That's, you know, if you want to be a faithful remake, you end up having to probably make some of those.
Yeah, I get it.
But sure. No, that makes sense. Would you say The Last of Us Part 2 suffers from similar thing of being like this world is very well established? I mean, obviously it's not a remake, but with it's like, hey, you know what this virused up world looks like. They did it last time, all the overgrown this and that. Like, is that a similar situation?
There are certain environments which are the set piece stuff, and that's a Naughty Dog thing, right? It's like we make these set pieces, these kind of combat rooms. Like there's the hotel, the gutted out hotel, which is really, that place is so good. I think the aquarium is really good. Yes. I think the open world stuff, just roaming around on the horse, is like okay, like in the early game stuff, but I think the interiors and the set piece stuff are really where the artistic design comes in. And I think they're fantastic, especially to help service what that game is. If you're reminded that this is supposed to be a horror game, this is supposed to be a dark corridors and things running and jumping out at you game. So I hear what you're saying, but like, I don't know.
They do take a zombie world to some interesting, like unusual environments. Like this is partially getting out of the realm of visual design, but I love that basically the end of the game is set in this like bougie San Diego beach community. And that happens to be where the biggest fucking assholes in the entire game are. I think that's pretty amazing.
That checks out.
So there are some elements like that. Even outside of the set pieces, I would say like you go through a lot of rotted out apartments in that game and houses, and I felt like maybe not every single one of them, but a ton of, and I mean, I know environmental storytelling is very cliched for a reason, but they did it really well in a lot of those. Yeah, a lot of those abodes, you know, a lot of those like just like you got like a little snapshot of whoever lived in practically every one of those homes that you went through, even when it was like completely irrelevant to the story. Like maybe there would be like something on a notepad scribbled down that gave you some more insight into it. But there's, you know, like there's an apartment where like there is a half played D&D game still laid out on the kitchen table, you know? Like you can still see the character sheets and like the little figurines that somebody was playing when they got fucking overrun by zombies. Like there's a ton of stuff like that in there.
The detail is extraordinary to the point where you start to feel like, oh my god, there's like too much detail here. Like take a break, everybody. Let's like there's the
don't sleep on your desk.
Home. Like we didn't need this like this note with the real photo of the person handwritten. Like the other thing I liked was the stadium where the kind of they're housed up and and they go through like here's the mess hall, here's the training facility, here's the kennels. Like it's a very realized paramilitary. Yeah, the whole thing.
Also, we'll get into it later, but like that's also the moment where they like invert the kind of moral layout of that game, right? It's like these are the people who have been the shitty villains throughout the entire game, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, like they actually have like they may be like violent authoritarian assholes, but they have like a thriving society in which this kindergarten is safe to, you know, just be little kids and stuff. Like it's a cool use of environment for stuff like that.
So I think more than my memory is pretty terrible, as everybody knows, but I think more than The Last of Us 1, there are more lived-in areas where you see society coming back that are rendered very well. That try to show that like this is what life could look like. I mean, Last of Us Part 2 is a lot about that. You get a lot of the community stuff. I think that's a big part of that game of like the factionalizing of these communities and the fights and the what's happening. And those environments. And I think not only that, I think Brad, you mentioned it before, the performance capture for that stuff is just off the charts. It is Uncharted, if you will. It is Naughty Dog. It is so good where you really like. They say so much with the expressions and what's happening, and in a lot of ways uncomfortably so. Like the parts where you need to look away because it is like this is too much. This is a little bit unnerving at how because you know. It is also pretty much grim the entire way through. It is, there are parts of that game that are rendered, parts with Joel, parts with Ellie that are just rendered in excruciating detail that are tough to watch. So yeah, it's for me it would easily make a top 3 on that stuff. But the arguments for the rest of these are very strong as well. I mean, I think Remake is also a really striking game. I think the weakest one on here is probably Ghost of Tsushima for me. I mean, not that it is a weak game, but I just think or artistically weak. I just think of this list, it is probably the one I would take off. But it is also a fantastic looking game. I think it's a tough year.
Yeah, I think for me, like I put Tsushima on there, but I picked it over Remake and Last of Us 2 because I finished Tsushima. I've seen all of it, whereas I've not seen all of Last of Us, and I've definitely not seen all of Final Fantasy VII Remake. But for me, I think any of those middle 3 are kind of interchangeable for me. I think they all have similar and effective arguments for them. Like Ori is kind of in a class of its own, doing a very specific thing that is really a sight to behold. And I think Microsoft Flight Simulator is in the same boat. Like it's doing a totally different thing, but it is very much in a class of its own, doing this really fucking wild thing with environmental rendering and just the way that it portrays the world in which you are flying. And the other 3 games are all really cool looking, big budget, like console games that take the full advantage of their hardware and do what we expect those kinds of games to do, albeit in different ways with different aims. And I think so for me, any of those 3 could be the third one, but I think I feel much more strongly about Ori and Microsoft being in that top 3.
Interesting about Microsoft. Like how does I that's the game on here I've seen the least. How does it handle, like, can you get close to stuff? Does it break if you is it a game where like the macro is beautiful and the micro is a little or
it's what I've seen of it, I think that's kind of the case, right?
Yeah, it's like especially in dense urban areas, like it is definitely extruded Google Maps. But there are certain areas that are like so the way they sold that game, there are certain curated, handcrafted things, like a certain monuments or national parks or places around the world that they went in and did like, okay, we're going to hit these because obviously they can't do everything, or certain airports where they went in and just handcrafted this, and the rest are generated from data and stuff like that. So,
hey,
so
it's
there
a
are
big
certain
planet. I get it.
it's a large planet, and so certain areas are definitely going to look crunchier than others. But yeah, like if you fly around New York City and try and get low into it, you will start to see smeary textures and stuff that is definitely looks like it is an extruded map. Sorry, not Google Maps, probably Bing Maps or something. But like it definitely extruded satellite data.
So there's porno everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, giant porn everywhere. But it is don't forget you're in an airplane. The point of this game is to also be flying and landing, I guess.
I think the thing that's more impressive to me, it's not that there's no seams in it. Like you can certainly run into areas where it's like, oh, that's fucked up. That's not supposed to look like that. Or, you get in on some of those, like, when you were landing your plane in the Grand Canyon, like sometimes that shit can look a little funny. But the thing is, like, when you give the log line for what that game is and what it's trying to accomplish, the correct response is, oh, fuck off. You're not going to pull that off. That's not going to work at all. And the degree to which it does work is pretty nuts. Like I'm not saying it's flawless. I'm not saying every little texture is exactly the way it should be and that they have accomplished every single thing they set out to do. But what they have managed to achieve with that, I think, is wholly impressive in a way that simulator games have never really been able to pull off in a way before. And I don't know, like I really want it. Like my personal feeling is I really want to reward the sheer ridiculousness of that concept working at all, let alone how well it works.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. That's the handcrafted stuff. Obviously they're going to be like, oh, here are these big landmarks and like airports. That's where you're just supposed to be getting low and all that. I like the fucked up part. As someone who spent a lot of time in Google Earth VR, which is all fucked up all the time. When you get close to the surface, it's like it is street view data, extruded in some horrifying ways that gives it like an almost artistic quality that I really ended up appreciating. And Flight Simulator ends up doing that, I think, a little bit better than Google Earth VR does in the grimy areas that they haven't necessarily gone in and touched. I think there's the visual improvement there over something that has come before it. And I think the stuff they touched up, like, it looks really great also, and the weather and some of the other stuff, the planes, like there's a scope to it that is, it's unmatched.
And they have day and night, they have weather. So like, there were points where I was just like, I'm going to fly out of Italy at nighttime and I'm just going to fly over Italy, and it's gorgeous. It's like twinkling. The lights are all up. And it really is, it's not just map data. They're doing things, they're working within that. And also the planes themselves are, at least from what I can tell, I'm not a pilot, never sit in these, but from talking to a pilot, seem to be pretty spot on in terms of how they look on the inside. So I love just sitting at the airport. I would sit at LaGuardia in a Cessna with the lights off, and then flick the cabin lights on, and just start flipping switches, and it just looking around and seeing the other players taking off, and it's wild, man. It is visually wild thing.
There was multiplayer like that in there.
Yeah.
Wow. Huh. That's cool.
So
it sounds technically incredible.
That's a pretty strong argument. Like, I wouldn't personally put it in the top 3, but that definitely sounds like it.
It sounds like maybe our list here is Ori, Microsoft Flight Sim, and then one of these AAA Sony games.
Seems like that's
I want to point out, out of the 3 Sony games here, all of them have fantastic highs. But some of the lows that stick out to me personally is the dump area in Final Fantasy VII Remake, and some of the random assets in the game are kind of fuzzy. Like, they make a big deal that Jesse's mom makes this mean pizza called the Midgar Special, and then I'm expecting some good pizza. But then when Jesse's mom throws it out onto the table, and it looks like a a gummy trolley pizza, it's not as appetizing as it was
It's
made
not
out
a
to
great
be.
looking pizza.
So you're saying we need to put 13
what
Sentinels
you-
back on the list?
Okay, yeah, let's switch that up.
You did remind me of the very stark contrast between the main characters in that game and a lot of the NPCs that you talk to in terms of the
Yeah.
quality of the facial modeling and stuff like that. That's pretty striking now that you mention it.
Mhm.
and there
you can-
was like a lot of I remember like people were having weird texture bugs and stuff. I don't know if they ever fixed
They
that.
still have not fixed that.
I don't remember
Oh,
any
they-
like popping out for me specifically, but I saw enough screenshots
Same.
that it seemed like it was a problem.
Yeah, I had some of that. The resolute. What do they call it? The dynamic resolution stuff on some of the textures, where it wouldn't pop the high res texture until you're too close. I had some of that stuff, but man, it's a great looking game. I mean, again, I think whoever said it, I think a couple of people have said it. That middle pack there is that's a fight. That's
I rolled into this category thinking Ghost of Tsushima was like as much of a lock as anything could be a lock, but I feel like Vinny has maybe won me over on Last of Us, actually.
I am still locked in for Ghost of Tsushima. I think that, well, I mean, I played that, and I didn't play. I played like 2 hours of Last of Us Part 2, but there are just these moments in that game where, like, they do so you know. Okay, I'm not gonna be spoilery here, vaguely spoilery, I guess, but the last kind of third of that game involves a lot of like large scale. The game starts and ends with large scale conflict. Like it starts with that fight on the beach where all the samurai get murdered, and then it ends with like a big raid on the Khan's forces. And the first time I was playing those later areas, I was like, okay, I'm just getting through this. I want to beat this game. I want to see how it plays out. And you're so overpowered at that point that you can kind of just like waltz through those later areas. But then I started taking the time to just kind of like sit back and see what was happening on the battlefield. And there was a ton of like fights going on that all looked compelling. Like there was a lot of large scale stuff, I think, that game does really interesting, and only a few times, but I think the times it does it, it's really cool. And then the small scale stuff that stands out to me are the duels in that game. The duels in Ghost of Tsushima are, to me, on the same cinematic level that people talk about Naughty Dog stuff. Specifically, there's one set of side quests in Act 2 where you have to duel like 6 swordsmen, and then you duel the last one in a cave.
Oh yeah.
And like first of all the different duels are great because they're all like, this one's in a swamp, this one's in front of a waterfall, like this one's on the beach. They're all really distinct visual locations, all within the same like chunk of land. But then that last duel in that cave, I think, to me, was like one of the most, and it's a broad term, but one of the most cinematic things I've seen in a game. And then the very last duel, without saying what it is just so beautiful. And a lot of it was like the emotion that's tied to what's happening there, but just like visually, that giant tree, that lake, the leaves, like it was such a strong entry for me that made me kind of just like think that it was like, it's hard for me to imagine games looking better than that.
Yeah, and I think one thing I would add, just from my own personal preference, and I will say actually Last of Us 2 is a lot better at this than the first game was, but Ghost of Tsushima is a game that loves color, and they are trying to use color and color palettes, and just like, every area kind of has this very storybook quality to it because it all just like every piece of scenery just pops in a way. And Last of Us 2 is, I think it is better at like creating environments that don't just feel like the same brown misery that a lot of the first game was. Like I think that when you first get into that like whole Seattle area, like I think there's stuff in there that really pops in a way that the first game did not have. And there's a few cases like that. But for me, I just, in terms of a game I wanted to look at, I think what Tsushima is doing with that stuff and its weather effects and just everything it's doing with its lighting and all that stuff, like that was a big part of what carried me through it. Because Lord knows it wasn't the game design, which is fine and enjoyable enough, but it is not necessarily the thing that was like propelling me forward. The thing that propelled me forward was wanting to just see what they were going to like kind of drop on you next, as far as like the next big area, the next big zone.
I agree with that. I think there's, like with what Ben said about the duels and with what you're saying about just kind of the use of color and palette and stuff like that. I think Ghost of Tsushima it's a pleasure to look at, and I don't know if that's just if we're just getting down to the nature of these two games, that The Last of Us Part 2 is a game that is specifically designed to not be a pleasure to look at.
That game struggles to depict anything beautiful because there is nothing beautiful left in the world.
Yeah, and that's that's what they're going for, and that's fine. I think if I'm looking at a visual thing that I would rather reward, it is the look at this use of color, look at all this cool stuff. Like I think Ghost of Tsushima edges out Last of Us for me. And I guess the other question is, should we cut Final Fantasy VII at this point? That
seems like
yeah.
That fat chocobo. That fat chocobo looks real good.
That fat chocobo is so fat. Oh, God, I love him.
What about Final Fantasy 14? I mean, you want a fat chocobo? That's where it really lives, right? Like
that part when you're on the roof of Shinra and you're fighting Rufus, and he just rolls up in that helicopter, and then he knocks you off the roof, and Tifa does that slide thing and catches you, is one of the coolest fucking cutscenes in a video game.
Yeah, this game has a good Final Fantasy VII Remake has a good habit of making you just like fall in love with the characters, just because, well, the main characters at least. Just because of like how emotive and like just gosh darn pretty they are.
Mm-hmm.
Barrett.
I mean, we'll talk more about this, I'm sure, later in the categories, but I will just say right up here at the top, it is really nice to see that people loved that remake, because the weight of expectation on that thing was so ridiculous, and I can't think. It really feels like people got more than what they wanted out of it, which is great.
It's insane because it did that, but then it also, like, I never played original Final Fantasy VII, and now I care about Final Fantasy VII. Like, it hit both audiences in a weird way. But yeah, we'll talk about that.
It's a good house too,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that hell house. Oh, that hell house.
I think Ori, Tsushima, Flight Simulator is an incredible trio.
I think that's where I'm at.
I think The Last of Us is, like, I would be totally fine with it getting on there if the support is there. But it just I've already made my case. Where I lean Tsushima.
It's weird. Like just like Jeff, like I could not get into the aesthetic of Last of Us 2. It was depressing and distressing, and I just had a hard time being in that
this
world.
This past year especially.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very torn because, like I said, I came in here thinking that might win this category, but Alex's argument about it being pretty one note, and Vinny's arguments for Last of Us having a ton of variety and imagination in what they do with it has kind of won me over. I don't know.
The set pieces in like The Last of Us, since Ben mentioned the duel in Ghost of Tsushima, like The Last of Us Part 2, some of the set pieces brought genuine terror to me. Just because of like the visuals, like the moment in the hospital. I'm sorry, I'm going to get into spoilers, but moment of the hospital when you dip down into the basement, and it's just like the flashing red lights, and you see the infected, and like the WLF are after you, and some of the infected are blind, so you could still see them, and like they're right up on you, are like genuinely terrifying. And I'm, as a person that's not scared of heights, there's a moment later in the game when you're playing as Abby, you're climbing on a bunch of rickety scaffolding across the Seattle skyline. And, your little buddy Lev is just jumping around like a little monkey. It's like, hey, Abby, hurry up. Are you scared? What's wrong? Like, meanwhile, like the use of motion blur with like looking down at the skyline and like the controls. I mean, the controls don't factor into this argument, but the combination of all of the visuals and that, like, made me feel really queasy and like made me feel genuinely sick, like how the character must have been feeling. And the points that everyone has brought up to how that's a very depressing game, part of that is because you see everything, and it was a hard game to look at sometimes because of the violence aspect to it. Like seeing Abby choke out a person was hard to look at because of how good it looked seeing Abby choke someone out. And then, I think it's also something to shout out that The Last of Us Part 2 has 2 incredibly strong female leads and 2 very different types of female leads in that regard. And like another moment that like stood out to me specifically is when you first meet Yara and Lev and you're running through, I think it's like the Seattle Zoo, or you're running through like an overgrown part of Seattle in the dark with only holding a torch, and Lev and Yara are shooting arrows and throwing rocks. Meanwhile, like you have to punch whatever infected wind up coming to you. And it was that moment in the game that I was reminded, like, oh yeah. Last of Us Part 2, it's also a horror game. And fuck all this crap. Like I couldn't, because it looks so damn scary.
I forgot about that hospital environment, man. Like that is some of
Resident Evil.
The most eased out I have been in a video game environment, like top 3. Like it's the kind of ground floor or basement ER in whatever Seattle hospital, which is where the outbreak started in that part of the country. And it's still got the like FEMA tent over all the entryways because they lost control of it basically. And like some of the visual storytelling in there, like you go in there and there are a bunch of like nurses still in scrubs, except mutated and like grown into the wall basically. And they end up popping off and fighting you at some point. But like the idea that the very like frontline healthcare workers who were trying to stop the outbreak then became infected by it and then fucking were stuck to a wall for 25 years and still alive is like one of the most like unsettling and tragic things I can think of ever seeing in a game. Like there's some wild shit in there.
But to counter from the misery, there are also beautifully rendered scenes that only work, I think, because of the fidelity of the game. And one of them is the Joel and Ellie museum part where they go inside the capsule with the tape recorder, and the emotion, like the capture and the detail in which they model that museum and the inside of the lunar lander, the capsule that is there is amazing. It makes that whole scene work. That's
a really inspired moment because that game is so grounded in reality overall. Like it's very, everything is very naturalistic in that game. But in that moment, they actually like, unless I made this up in my memory, don't they like add actual like kind of star effect type stuff? Like they make that sequence dreamy because that's like what she's seeing in her mind there, right? Like they step out of the realism that they're going for throughout that game to kind of dress that up in the way that she's experiencing it.
Yeah, I think it works. I think Last of Us Part 2 works in its misery core and in its more redeeming moments and its charming moments. But it is. But I think it's easy to lose sight of some of the artistic efforts in it because of the technical efforts. But I think there is just like an amazing team behind the artistic design in that game. That also. All of that stuff is lit, is set, is designed. There is. Maybe there is now, but at the time when it was made, there wasn't as much of a post-apocalyptic world to look at, to model off of. I think it's an amazing accomplishment there, and I think, I could also argue some of the same points for Ghost of Tsushima in realizing this feudal Japan and that. But I think The Last of Us Part 2 resonated a little more in terms of what the vision for that world was more than Tsushima did for me. I think Tsushima, while I think it's an amazing looking game, I think the artistic merits and the look of Last of Us Part 2 struck me more.
Yeah.
Hard to argue against
Tsushima, to stick for a second. Microsoft Flight Simulator seems like an amazing technical achievement. I'm not sure how much of an artistic or like visually compelling argument you could make for it. I understand that once you're in the cockpit, it's extremely immersive. You look out the window and it's like, wow, those clouds look real. That skyline looks very real. But this seems like just like a pinnacle of like a technical achievement for sure. But I think maybe some of these other games have, I don't know,
a better blend maybe of artistic and technical.
Yeah, there's much more. There's much more authorship to the other three. Like, yeah, I had the exact same thought, but I don't want to like nominate Flight Simulator to cut because there are such strong arguments for it. But yeah, like
Yeah,
the top three on this list are my
I'm
top
just like I said, I'm just poking stuff.
I know that's fair. The counter I would give to that is that if we're going to knock this game off of this category for those reasons, then I think we might be looking at a situation where a game that is about realistic simulation of the world can just never be on here because, but that's the thing though, is that like this is genuinely one of the most impressive attempts at doing anything even remotely like this I think we've ever seen. And, you know, is it a flawless piece of art? No. And does it hit every single mark? No. But what it's trying to do is like I said, ludicrous. And I think that the what they managed to accomplish within the confines of that ludicrous concept is more than impressive enough to qualify it. I think that just because it isn't necessarily hand authored the way that a lot of this other stuff is, at least on the scale, I don't know. Like I think that there's something to be said for striking out in a way that is so ambitious and so just and you know, technologically aided certainly, but like just something so ambitious as in rendering a world that feels like a thing that you would actually fly through is I totally worth rewarding with what they pulled off.
I would say it being straightforward. A straightforward like reproduction of reality is not disqualifying in and of itself. It's the thing that Ben said of like all three of these other games we're right at the tail end of this generation, and these are some of the best developers in the industry with years of experience on that hardware under their belts, and they are bringing their AAA game to these games. Like these are the best games visually on those platforms, basically. You know,
I think that's actually what
a very strong year for very good looking games. You know.
Yeah,
but that I think for me that is what actually makes it those games a little less impressive to me, in the sense that this is like the people who made Microsoft Flight Simulator are not a studio that everyone is like immediately familiar with. Like you don't point to them and go like, oh, they're going to make one of the best simulator games anyone's ever seen before. And like I think that, you know, with the sense of like Last of Us 2 and especially being a sequel and Ghost of Tsushima, those are the kind of impressive, and they are impressive, but they are the kind of impressive I expect from those studios. Ori and the Will of the Wisps is absolutely the kind of upgrade I would expect from the people who made that first game, and it is a very impressive upgrade. But like Flight Simulator to me, just kind of like from the day they announced it to when that thing launched, I never expected them to pull it off the way that they did. And that, I think, is why it sticks so hard for me in this category, because I could not have expected less from the wild ass shit they were talking about that game. And I'm duly impressed with what they actually pulled off.
And I think that goes back to what I had said about Google Earth VR, where like, you know, that's a case of like, here's what map data looks like. So, you know, that even built an expectation for me of like, well, I know what that looks like, and it kind of sucks up close, and it's like impressive, but with all these caveats. And I think that by them going in and touching up stuff, and also I just think a lot of the raw data I think looks a little bit cleaner than the Google Earth VR stuff from what I have seen. I've not seen the entire world in Flight Simulator, I can say. But I think the effects and stuff around it, yeah, I think like this is such an impressive technical achievement that they have pulled off, just strictly, you know, from a visual standpoint. And granted, you know, their scope is way crazier than any of the other games on this list or any of the other games that really came out this year. So it's like it's a weird comparison to make, right? But I think they have pulled off so much of that. And then the stuff that, like, you know, you would expect them to get right, like, hey, look at these planes, like, look at, like, they didn't skimp on that either. You know, it's like, hey, they nailed the stuff that, like, is very nailable. And then on top of that, they made good on their map data to not just be the grimy, like, look at half a tree that's floating in the air because Google Street View is weird that right. You saw in Google Earth VR. So I look at that. I think that is more than enough for it to be a top 3 game. Which is hard because, like, you know, I think Ghost of Tsushima is a great game on this list also. It just doesn't seem like the support is there for that over the other 3.
Should we go around the horn
samurai
one more
we've
time?
seen.
Not even. I don't know. Ghost
then,
might
then
be.
I want to hear it, because like I feel like Alex and I have made the cases for Ghost of Tsushima. Ben, you talked about it some as well, but like the argument for Last of Us Part 2 seems very, very strong to me. So
I can make an argument about Ghost. I just don't think my argument for that is not as strong as the arguments for Last of Us at this point. It's kind of the thing.
I would say
it has an aesthetic and it does that very well, but it is kind of that one thing throughout.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, like, is that much different? Like, okay, I personally would remove Last of Us from this list because I think I'm just a little bit biased against Naughty Dog games. People, they look great. They look like, if you talk to the average person and we're like, what does a good looking video game look like? I think those like Uncharted and Last of Us kind of come to the forefront of a lot of people's minds, maybe. I think my problem is it's just they're trying to emulate the real world, a fucked up version of it, a completely, years after a pandemic hits version of it. But I will always be biased towards games that are trying to do something a little more fantastical and really make an effort to do something, or that are just technically incredible, like Flight Sim. You guys really sold me on that one. But I think Last of Us, to me, is just kind of like, yeah, that's snow. Yeah, that's a cliff. I get it. And they do a good job of making it look very pretty. But to me, it's just flat in a way that, like, it doesn't have a spark for me. It feels like it's like kind of a weird like design. It's hard for I cannot argue that it is a bad looking video game. I don't think so. I just think it is less inspired in its scope, let's say, compared to some of these other games.
It does not spark joy for you.
It doesn't. And I think the point, I mean, we were talking around it in a weird way, but I think the point of I don't want to look at this right now is works against it. I mean, sure, that's what they were going for, but like it is impossible for us to separate ourselves as the viewer from it's impossible to be impartial and look at something that is about a pandemic, that is about like humanity at its worst, and not go, I don't want to look at this right now. It's not a knock against the technical aspect of the game, but more of the direction of it. And I think that's like worth considering.
And I will say for Tsushima's part, like, as much as we've talked about how it looks like, this wispy wonderland fantasy version of Japan, there's a lot of real fucked up shit happening in that game. A lot of people die horribly in that game. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of misery. But you know what? It never overwhelms you the way that I felt like it did with... And I mean, that's on purpose with Last of Us 2. It is trying to overwhelm you with misery. That is what the game is going for. But with Tsushima, it's like, yeah, there's some really miserable shit happening around the edges, but I can't say that it ever really weighed on me in a way. Like, they find a way to make that stuff visually compelling without making me want to just turn it off and go, I can't deal with this right now. And that's, I mean, it's a small distinction, but I think it is an important one.
That game is very much a tragedy. Like, from start to finish, every character you meet pretty much is tragic. And what happens to most characters is tragic, but it's not, like you said, it's not like, I don't think Last of Us is quite gore porn, but it's not like that level of we are going to make you bathe in tragedy. It is like, look at this sad story we are telling.
To bounce off that, there are very warm moments in the game that do stick out.
Of course.
Like the moment where, there's now a baby, and now you just want to protect this baby, and it seems like everything is going to be fine on an idyllic farm, and the farm just wind up looking completely different than everything else in the game. And the different environments in this game, in Last of Us 2 Part 2, or Last of Us Part 2, the different environments wind up looking so varied from each other. Like the aquarium, like, gosh darn, like I said this in the spoiler cast, but I wish there was a zombie shark. But their ability to make it look decrepit over the years, to see it run down from a bustling metropolitan aquarium in the middle of a city to now looking like, oh, this is someone's base that they've been running on the side for like a decade or two is something to be said. Like the detail added there of like, okay, like we managed to make this stadium into a home base for thousands of people. And like another sequence in the game, you know, that's another dark point, unfortunately, is like when the I forget the cult group, but when their little island is just burning to the ground, and it's just like nothing but hell and fire, and like all that's being realized. And like, you know, going back to another war moment besides the museum and besides like meeting like baby JJ, it's like like the in between of walking through broken down Seattle and then seeing like the glimmer of hope in the middle of it with when Ellie finds the guitar is just like, okay, like now this is a respite. This is a break. There is some type of beauty in, you know, this misery around. And like the ability to have those shining moments amidst all the poop storm, I think is something to be said. And like, you know, the faces and like the performance in that also stands out so much in like I want to look away because I don't want you to go through any more pain. Or it's like that meme of like, stop, he's already dead type of thing of like, Ellie, just stop. Like, just don't do this anymore. Because I don't want you to go down this path because like the faces are emoting so well in those moments. Slightly stands above Tsushima for me.
Yeah, I would to the performance capture, I would add some of the direction is pretty standout. Like, I just mean like camera angles and editing and stuff like that. Like the slight mild mid-game spoiler for Last of Us Part 2. Mute your thing. When Jesse gets shot in the theater, like the confrontation in the theater lobby, like that whole fucking, I would almost count the frames in the moment from him bursting through the door to taking a bullet in the face and going down. And it couldn't be more than 2 seconds or something. Like there are spots where like they don't linger on this like, I started to say beloved character. I don't know if he has enough screen time to quite rise to the level of beloved, but he's a very likable character. You know, like he's part of your posse. Like they do not stretch out that death sequence. Like he fucking takes a bullet to the face and is dead within 60 frames, and you are already moving on to the next person getting fucked up. You know, like they really make it like hard and fast and brutal at the times that they need to in spots. That's like pretty well done.
And I would actually, as a knock against Tsushima, I would say it is not always the best directed game. Like there are a lot of visual standout moments in there, but like there are scenes also that just come off as deeply corny and kind of like bad pastiche.
I
like
agree with that.
They never, like, as for all the Kurosawa talk, there is not very much of Tsushima that actually feels anything like a Kurosawa movie. It feels like a cover of one, but not like, you know, they don't capture, I think, the vibe or the overall, you know, visual flair of like the best Kurosawa stuff anywhere in that game. I think they, at best, they are very good.
I think they come a little close in some of the side quests.
Yeah.
Some of the smaller stories, but I think you're right, on a grander scale. It is video game plot.
And I think you have a lot of, you know, just Tsushima has a lot of moments where it's like, oh, here's one character talking to another character, and boy, one of these models looks a lot better than the other one because it's your player character, and then like armor or you know, like the hostage situations where it's just like guy on knees and then just kind of stands up. It's like such a,
it's very open
video
world-y.
gamey, like it's like the sort of thing. Yes, very very much like, look at all the objectives we put in our open world game. Like there are moments like that do kind of chip away at that. It's not as cohesive as it could be with some of that stuff for sure.
I agree with the element of cheese. I kind of like that it's cheesy. I kind of like that they are very shamelessly going for a thing that they don't fully realize. Like I actually enjoy that aspect of it. But yes, that is definitely the case.
Totally. From a vibe perspective, I think like it's the sort of thing that makes it just feel more like an open world game amongst other open world games. And you could take that as a positive or a negative, I guess, depending on where you're at.
The one thing I will say about that is that I mentioned it before, but at a certain point in that game, you're like super overpowered. And so I wasn't doing a lot of the just like, you know, follow a bird to a thing out in the open
Yeah.
world. But every time I made it to a new zone, I would make sure to do it a few times, not because I wanted to upgrade, purely just because I wanted to see what that world looked like at the top of whatever hill you're going to climb or whatever. And I can't think of another open world game where I've done that. But all that being said, it sounds like I was one of the hardest on Tsushima making it to this list. I think you guys have made a lot of good points of Last of Us. I think, I only played a couple hours of it, but there is a stark contrast between the cutscenes of those games of like Ghost of Tsushima. These two video games characters are talking to each other, and even in the beginning, like the scene that sticks out to me, having played 2 hours of Last of Us, is where Joel is teaching Ellie guitar. And I'm like, this is like two people talking. This is not like two video game characters talking.
Yeah, totally.
And much of that is some of that is the vocal performance, but a lot of that is the visual.
Yeah, and that game would not work if those performances were not as effective as they are.
Yeah.
So
I thought
thinking Ori.
I thought when I woke up this morning, I thought Ghost of Tsushima was winning this category, but I'm okay if it gets cut at this point.
I at least thought it was a lock for top 3. It's kind of crazy that we're saying this,
Yeah.
but
Unless you think it's better than Ori, I mean,
I do not.
No.
all right.
Even I don't think that, and I don't
Okay.
like the Ori games that much. But even I acknowledge
Yeah.
that as visual showpieces, those things are fucking second to none.
Yeah, and here's the
told
thing:
Ori is
wins
too
this
glowy?
category.
I'm told Ori is too glowy. I don't know.
Ori,
I'm hearing
100%.
a lot of talk about the.
Ori is very glowing.
Well-
So the funny thing about this list is these are absolutely the 3 great games I have called in my wife to come look at on the screen and gotten the like that's
Yes,
wild. Like flight. Well, not the like no that like Flight Simulator. Like, let's spend some time. Go fly over here. Like, look at this. Let's go look at this thing. Oh my gosh! Like, that's our house. All that stuff. Can you fly over here? Last of Us Part 2, which was definitely like, this is too much. I don't want to watch this, but like this is an amazing video game. And Ori, which was just like this is beautiful. Like this is a gorgeous looking game. I think these 3 games nail, and I think Tsushima did as well, but nail what they were going for. Like, hit the bullseye in what they were aiming for. They're very different. I don't think we could have had 3 different games on here aesthetically, but I think they all hit their design dock in exactly what they were setting out to do.
Yeah,
I think
agree.
there is one game on this list that is a 10 out of 10 for art direction and art execution, and that to me is Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I agree with Brad that it is arguably the best looking 2D game I've ever played. I think that game in motion is something that if you were to show me as a child, I would like freak the fuck out. It looks real good, y'all.
It does.
Oh, okay then.
I actually had that exact
Finally,
same thought.
said
About it. I had that exact same thought at some point playing that game of, I wish 8-year-old me could see this. Like, I wish me in the 80s could know that this is where video games were going, because holy shit.
Yeah, I think for me it's Ori. I say this again as someone who genuinely does not actually enjoy playing the Ori games that much. I am nonetheless very compelled to continue experiencing them because I just want to look at every fucking piece of art in those games. Like, they are pretty staggering at what they attempt to accomplish and what they do accomplish. And this one, from everything I've seen of it, is just like far and away fantastic, beautiful, gorgeous, love it.
Yes, I agree. I think I would put Ori at the top of this list. I think this list is really a very interesting representation of this year, especially in The Last of Us being probably the least game you want to play during a crisis that we have gone through in 2020, and Microsoft Flight Simulator being the game you want to play when you cannot leave your house to travel anywhere. So I think I think it is really interesting, and Ori just is sometimes his best looking can just go into the visual, but like when you think about the way the visuals interact with what the gameplay is intended to be, I think Ori also excels at that part. should complement what you're trying to do, and I think Ori.
Yeah, I think the visuals
Ori's not just
complement-
beautiful for beautiful sake.
It complements the feel of the action. It complements the tone of the writing and the story. Like it is extremely cohesive from top to bottom.
Yeah.
All right.
Good job, Ori.
Sounds good to me.
Best
All right.
looking.
Okay. Best looking game of 2020 is Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Say we.
6K.
Right, man. 6K. 6K. Also very good looking games, according to us, The Last of Us Part 2 and Microsoft Flight Simulator. And every other game we just talked about. They're all very
Yeah, totally.
Every single one of those games looks fantastic.
No, those games look like garbage now. I'm sorry.
Those are the rules. All right. Congratulations to those games. Best dad. Best
All right.
dad. Got some dads on here.
Are we
Shall I?
Yeah.
taking
Yeah.
a
Break. Oh God, that
Yeah.
we went a while on that one. Okay, let's take two and come back and rattle off some dads. Best dad, the most important of categories, is the next category.
Why we're doing it on day one.
That's right.
All downhill from here.
Shouts out to
right.
the moms too, though.
Start at the top.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, for sure.
We're just a lot of dads this year.
You know, I mean, we should point out right off the top that this is best dad, both literal and figurative. You don't have to
Yes,
be
that's right.
actual. You don't have to have offspring to be on this list. You just have to exhibit dadly qualities.
Those dad vibes.
That's right. Yes.
Got good dad jokes. We're dead.
No bad vibes, only dad
Yeah.
vibes.
These
What about-
characters.
and to clarify, Zaddy vibes also good
No.
too, right?
No.
Also
Yes,
acceptable.
Jan, you can be horny for these dads.
All right. Just to make sure we're covered across the board.
We should all be horny for these dads, damn it.
It is one of the factors of dadliness that we are considering for sure.
Zan.
I don't know what's even happening.
All right. Okay. Here's
Xanax.
the list.
Daniel.
See what you've done.
Here's the list.
All right. Here are the strongest dads we have come up with. Hades from Hades. Barrett from Final Fantasy VII Remake. Tom Nook from Animal Crossing. Lord Shimura from Ghost of Tsushima. Uncle Atul. Am I saying that right? From Spiritfarer.
Yeah.
Joel from The Last of Us Part 2. Dr. Anderson, who is Abby's dad from The Last of Us Part 2. Tony Hawk from Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2. Jesse from Final Fantasy VII Remake. Yusuf Khan from Marvel's Avengers. Spelunky Guy from Spelunky 2. Goku. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot.
Come on.
Piccolo.
There's no room for jokes on this list.
Piccolo. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot.
That's more like it.
Arakawa. Yes. Arakawa from Yakuza Like a Dragon. John, the class dad from Dark Pictures Anthology Little Hope.
He's basically like the dad of that class. You get it. Get those dad vibes.
Uncle Brad from Wide Ocean Big Jacket. We might have to ask.
Also an uncle.
The King from Yester Grace. Eric of Davern, I guess is his name. And Hot Dad from the Hunger Games Ensemble. I have no idea what that is.
I don't know.
I don't know what that is. I didn't put that
The
up.
Hunger Games Ensemble is a VR optional minigame collection created by internet singer sensation Hot Dad, who you may know as Chowder Man from Hypnospace Outlaw.
Right.
Oh.
What?
Well, we got our winner. There we go.
Type this into okay. This is in fact a standalone product on Steam.
Yep, that is the Hunger Games Ensemble is a product you can buy for money and play in VR or not VR.
Should I?
Okay. There are a
It's a
few
fun little thing.
bad dads on this list.
Some bad dads.
Yeah.
There are some
there's-
bad dads on this list. I'll throw
So we're
it
cutting Goku first.
Yeah, cut
out.
Goku.
Okay,
What the
yeah. I mean,
fuck?
for sure, Goku.
Goku Bad Dad.
Oh, he's the
Oh,
worst
no.
dad.
Worst-
he didn't even
no.
know he had a
Man.
second son.
Wow.
He is Drake hiding his children. He does not care for them.
Is Piccolo Pusha T in this situation or what? Like what?
Sure.
You are hiding a Dragon Ball.
You are hiding a Saiyan. I was gonna say, here's a bad dad from this list who can get fucked. Lord Shimura. He throws you in prison
Yeah.
at one point, which isn't very cool. IMO.
He's not.
Maybe
he's
you
not-
needed to learn something. It's just tough love, right?
That's
So
not
the
your
whole-
uncle. You're trying to save the whole game, or most.
It
or at
is.
least the first-
No, it
That
is.
is him.
It is.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, he at one point offers to adopt you, and that's cool. And then he starts giving you shit for using malicious tactics, which I have a problem with in a grander scale because the game is forcing you to make these choices and then getting mad at you for doing them, creating this like fake "ooh you fucked up" vibe that left a bad taste in my mouth. But
Yeah.
he is a piece of shit.
Yeah. fuck
No,
him.
okay. I won't go that far, but I will agree that he's he abandons his child, more or less, adopted child, for in his mind, you can tell he's conflicted about this. He hates that he's doing this, but also his dedication to his code ultimately supersedes his ability to realize that what his adoptive son is trying to do is ultimately for, the salvaging of their island and their community. And you're right. The imagined tension the game tries to come up with to be like, like Jin is he crossing a line here by using smoke bombs and stabbing guys from behind? It's like non-existent.
I really burned out on that aspect of that game because I was like, motherfucker, I'm crossing the line like 3 dozen times every time I take over a fort. Like, who cares?
And hey, here's the thing: the samurai, not the paragons of holiness that they think themselves.
Yeah, no joke.
But there was a point in that game. This is off the topic of the dad because we're veering out of dad realm here. But there was a point where the one who's giving me the most crap was that archer guy, and he's like, I can't believe you go up and slit a guy's throat, and then he's just firing fucking arrows from miles away, killing guys. They don't see you. You're just stealth killing guys. You just want me to hit him with the headshot.
Yeah, but I didn't sign up for that code. So it's cool.
It's literally like, are you facing your enemy? No matter what distance it is, as long as you are facing the enemy, it's samurai. If the
That guy told me to hit a
samurai.
He said hit a hornet's nest with an arrow to make the hornets come out and distract him and light him on fire with a fire arrow and burn the field so they all burn in the field. That was his advice to me, and then was like, oh, you snuck up and slit a guy's throat, huh? I guess you gotta do what you gotta do.
I like that character, but it's mostly by virtue of the fact that it's played by the scientist guy from Lost. So I have that association that made him more interesting to me. The actual character is kind of one note. And the game has no idea what to do with this notion of, hey, is Jin crossing a line here? Like, no, he fucking isn't. Like, it's never interesting. I do think they redeem Shimura a little bit at the end. I think the setup for the big final confrontation with him is done about as well as it can be in what is otherwise a very hacky, kind of hackneyed, hokey story. But is he? I think that there is something to be said for him, but I don't think the game does necessarily right by him through all of it. And I think they make him a little too cartoon cutout of a scolding authority figure by the time they get around to really acting on that stuff. So I think that ultimately he is not one of the best dads of 2020.
He is not top 3.
No, he's not even Zaddy.
No.
Yeah.
I would like to nominate for elimination Joel from The Last of Us Part 2. Joel is the epitome of a father figure or a dad that thinks like, oh, this little lie that I'm not going to tell my children won't wind up messing them up for the rest of their life, and then maybe causing plummeting the world into further hell than it's already in. Also, as I am not a father, but I think as a parental figure, you'd like to help your child or person you're taking care of learn how to properly handle their emotions and not go on a revenge spree, and acceptance of loss. And Ellie, as the whole game is just revenge spree. So Joel is he's a terrible dad. I mean, that museum trip, pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Coming out of the first game, off the ending of the first game, I would have said he's worst dad. yes, he does attempt to redeem himself. Like you see him he has grown as a character some in this game. But yeah, I mean this, deep down this game is all about dealing with the consequences of that choice he made in the previous game, right? So like he's never going to live that down.
Well, literally.
He is not, yes.
However, props to Joel for standing up for Ellie and Dina in that one dance get together they had and knocking out that one drunk dude. That was cool.
Look, it's not that Joel has no redeeming qualities as a human being. It's just that ultimately, for what we are determining in this category, I don't think he's not here.
Joel is a land of contrasts, you might say.
Joel a little too selfish to be on the best dad list. You gotta be a little selfless here. Joel's worried about his feelings. What is he feeling, huh?
Yes.
And I think for that reason, look, I put Tom Nook on here because I just, when I think about dad figures in video games, I think about Tom Nook. But look, Tom Nook is honestly barely even in this Animal Crossing game. Like he's barely even a factor. And ultimately his business isn't even like, he has nothing to do with it. The kids are running the business now. Like he does no dad, like he's the dad of the island, but he's barely there. He's an absentee.
He'll blow up
dad.
a bridge for you, which is pretty cool, but like that's about it.
But no, this is not the Animal Crossing game in which Tom Nook is the standout by any stretch.
I mean, he's teaching his nephew some good. I mean, they started opening their own shop and everything. So there's some enterprising something to be learned there.
It's all puppetry, man. Okay. He's pulling the strings from the back. He's pulling the strings.
Yeah, to his benefit, not theirs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Okay. All
Goodbye,
right,
Tom.
Goodbye, Tom Nook.
See ya, Tombo.
Okay, so Uncle Atul from Spiritfarer. Spiritfarer has kind of a weird relationship with the familial stuff. If we're getting literal on it, but if we're talking dad vibes, Atul is a giant frog that just wants to eat all the time. Who it just wants to have the family over for dinner and very dad vibes. The only problem with
just
Atul,
like him because he does woodworking. That's what you like.
He also does woodworking and wants you to fix up his carpenter shop. Or just wants to soak in his tub of water. And it wants to help you. He chops down trees for you. Wants to do some woodworking. Very dad vibes on this boat. Is kind of annoying because he also will eat anything. It's just a garbage disposal. Will just eat all the leftover food. Pretty good dad vibes coming from Atul. Not technically your dad in the game, but definitely the vibes on that boat.
Yeah, he is definitely the dad of the boat, 100%. And like,
boat dad.
I will say that though their particular vices and interests were not similar, Atul actually reminded me a lot of my uncle who passed this year, just in the way that he is this boisterous, lively figure that people sort of gravitate themselves toward. I left him on my boat for a really long time because I did not want him to leave. And so I don't know, like just as a pure character, like he's one of my favorites of this year. And I think that he gives off some of the best dad vibes of any game I played this year for sure.
Yeah. A lot of vibes.
Okay. Should I just open the can of worms? I have not finished Hades, but what's up with Hades?
Hades is the best dad.
Okay. The time I have spent with that game, he seems like kind of a dick, but I'm not sure.
Yes.
He is kind of a dick. That's absolutely true.
Dick. For sure. Okay, well, I guess we're going to get pretty massively into Hades spoilers here. Let's do it. So the first time, if anyone's completely unfamiliar, you're playing as the son of Hades. You're trying to get out of Hades, the place, and Hades, the guy, doesn't want you to do it. And he is the last boss of the game. He is the last thing you face before you get out of hell and into Greece. And the first time you beat him, you make it and you meet your mom. And it's this big emotional moment of like, oh my God, like, why did you leave me? Like I have so many questions. And then you start to kind of fade away and end up back in hell because you are hellborn. And people who are hellborn can't stay on the surface, basically. And so the goal of the game then, instead of get out of hell, becomes get your questions answered. Get out of hell enough so that like every time you make it to the surface, you have like a 10-minute conversation with Persephone. And every time you make it to Hades before that, he like will basically give you another reason of why he doesn't want you to leave, why you're acting the fool, why are you being so insolent? I've made such a good life for you here, boy, and you're throwing it all away. But the more you play and the more you learn from her, you start to realize that the gods, as they often do, set up a really fucked up situation where they stole Persephone away from Mount Olympus. They gave her to Hades as a bride, and then she only left hell because she thought you were dead upon birth, right? You were supposed to be stillborn because the fate said that Hades could never have an heir. And so you start to learn, like, okay, maybe it's not so much that he doesn't want me to leave. It's more so that if the gods find out what's been going on down here, they are going to raise a shitstorm and basically like kill your mom and maybe kill you and everyone you love. And so you start to kind of realize that Hades is keeping you there because he is trying to keep both her and you safe. And it's a nice little touch, but then it really all comes together for me in the 10th time, the last time you're making it out. You know, you're fighting your way to surface, and in your mind, like, there's this meta layer to it where, like, I knew after 10 runs you get like the quote true ending. And I knew this was my 10th run. Like, I had a really good build. I was blazing my way through. I was like, damn, I've got like this broken build. I'm ready for like a big win. And you make it up to the surface, and he's standing there, and it's different. I can't remember if the music's different too, but like, he's, instead of like standing there and posing, he's just kind of like looking off into the ocean. And he's like, he lets you go. You're like, come on, we don't have to do this, do we? And he's like, you know what? No, we don't. Go. And so you don't even fight him. Like the 10th time, this big, like, you're about to go do it, you've kind of, Hades has come around on realizing that, like, living this life is a lie, basically. And he has to kind of let you forge your own path as an adult. And then you get this little sweet thing after the credits where, like, he's like, okay, I mean, I get why they do this for a roguelike, but they're like, okay, instead of you trying to break out from hell, I finally found a job you're good at. Because you have these like flashbacks to where you're working for him, like doing paperwork and shit, and it's just awful, and he's berating you, and you're late to work every day. He's like, I finally found a job you're good at, and it's breaking out of hell. So I'm going to make you the official security tester, and it's going to be your job to keep testing my security and make sure that nobody else can ever make it out of here. And it just like ends with a big happy family reuniting. And I think so much of that is driven by the contrast. Like, Hades grows as a character more than maybe anyone else in that game, which is interesting because he's the one you kind of interact with the least other than fighting him.
This now actually just kind of makes me want Supergiant to make a sneakers game, because you just described Zagreus is now forming the sneakers team, but for hell. Yeah. I will say my one thing about this is that it's one of those stories where if Hades had just not been such a fucking dickhead for so long, a lot of stress could have been avoided, and maybe a lot of like the purpose for this game to even, and the story to even exist, probably could have been avoided if he had just,
for sure,
all his fucking pride and clarified some things. But I agree that the journey.
But he's also a god, right? And that's the whole thing. It's like the gods don't do that.
Yeah, clearly not.
I like Hades on this list. I think that whole arc, that whole run is really something special.
I still never fully got why he was trying to keep you in hell.
Because like the vibe I got, and I could be wrong on this, is that
he knew that the gods were trying to help you.
Yeah.
Yes.
He knows.
It's Persephone specifically. I think you know they don't know her fate per se.
They didn't want the gods.
And they have the party with all the gods at the end of it. Like, they have this big dinner party.
Yeah, like, and then they basically say, like, oh, we knew. We're gods. Of course we fucking knew what happened the whole time. Like, are you kidding me?
Like, everyone just kind of agrees to be like, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a funny way for it to go.
Yeah.
I do like that epilogue a whole lot.
I have starred Hades on this list.
One I think we can get rid of, though. I do agree this is a good figure, but I don't think he's necessarily more standout than any of the other characters in that game. Is Wide Ocean Big Jacket Uncle Brad? I like Uncle Brad. He's a sweet guy.
Yeah.
And like he's very understanding for the kids and their eccentricities and stuff. So Wide Ocean Big Jacket is a small story about two kids going camping with one of their aunt and uncle, and it is kind of about coming of age, teens kind of figuring themselves, like preteens kind of figuring themselves out, asking a lot of questions of these older people that they know, but maybe, don't know everything about. And those two people also kind of just sort of interacting with each other and sort of like working through some of their stuff as well. It's a very slight game, but it's very sweet, very charming. And Uncle Brad is just a nice dude. Like he's a good guy. And I think that, but again, I don't think he's necessarily like the standout character in that game. He's a nice factor in that story.
Yeah, he's. I put him on this list because it's one. I wanted to give some shout outs to Wide Ocean Big Jacket. I think it's a really fun game with some really good character work. It's the Uncle Brad and I can't remember the partner's name, but they're also like using this as a test run for, I think, if they want to have kids. I think is it Mort is the girl. Yeah. She's pretty great, and they go through a lot of stuff there, but he's definitely fits into more into the cool uncle category than best dad category. He's trying to play the part of like, I'm cool uncle. You're like, hey, hang out with us. Like, whoa, my dad doesn't let us do this stuff. Like, well, I'm not. Wait, does he not?
I'll let you have
that
half
kind
my
of thing.
beer.
Yeah. It's fun. It's a fun game, but for dad vibes, Uncle Brad probably is not going to stay on here.
One day, Uncle Brad will make a best dad, but we're not there
yet. Maybe.
Always an uncle, never a dad.
Yeah.
Also, the king from Yes Your Grace, the king from Yes Your Grace,
most bedraggled and put upon dad, maybe of everyone on this list, like dude who is just not dealing with his shit well.
The king in Yes Your Grace, the king has 3 daughters. The kingdom is basically in crisis mode the entire time, with you having to decide, are you marrying off a daughter? Are you doing this stuff? It's some real fucking tough problems with. And it always went poorly for me. I think I don't think I had the good run of Yes Your Grace. Interesting dad problems. Definitely having to deal with some very specific what is good for the kingdom, what is good for the family vibes for Yes Your Grace. So could stay on this list, but that is the dad vibes from Eric of Daverin, which I had to look up. I just remembered the king from Yes Your Grace. Tough one for the king in Yes Your Grace.
Yeah.
There's 2 on here from Final Fantasy VII Remake, Barrett and Jessie. I threw Jessie on there kind of as a goof. She is the de facto dad of that unit of whatever Goofus and Gallant. I forget their names.
Wedge and
Wedge and yeah. But she also has such a good aura of divorced dad horniness that I just wanted to shout out. Excuse me. She is daddy in that game, but not nearly as much compared to the literal father in that game, who is trying to save the world for his child, Barrett.
Every other word out of Barrett's mouth is Marlene. I gotta save Marlene. So I think we should put a star next to Barrett, because Barrett willingly becomes an eco-terrorist to fight off Shinra and conglomerization capitalism to create a better world in the future for Marlene. Also, he has a sick gun arm.
Yeah, true. That's true. Yeah. While he does not go to that level, there's no part of me that does not believe that Tony Hawk absolutely would do the exact same thing. If he could attach a skateboard to his arm that shoots skateboards at people to stop the destruction of the world so that his child could continue to shred, I believe that he would do that.
So we know Tony Hawk to be a literal dad.
Yes.
And based on his social media presence, he seems like quite a charming person. But how much dadliness does he exhibit in the actual game?
He put his son in the game.
Here's what he does. He put his child in the game.
Okay, that's pretty good. That's not bad.
Tony Hawk is the person on this list. Well, it helps that he's a real human, but is my number one. I wish this was my dad candidate of all of them. Like, I wish my dad could do a 900 more than anything. And he, like, okay, I bet he would have put Riley in the game if it wasn't good, but the fact that he put his kid in one of the best video games of the year and a game that like will have a pretty long life, I bet, like people will be a lot of people will download this game for a long time, is just really fucking cool and really cool dad thing to do, you know?
I think Riley Hawk is a professional skater in his own right at this point. It's not just like a pure, and also I want to say that Riley Hawk has been in some pretty bad Tony Hawk games prior to this one.
For sure. I mean, I would be in a bad, I'd take being in a bad video game.
It's like, it's, you know,
a good game. That's good dad leads.
Yeah. Hey, you earned it. Yeah, I would like to see Tony Hawk on this list.
Yeah, you're not going to get me to vote against Tony Hawk on this list. It's not going to happen.
To add to that, Tony Hawk is also like a spiritual godfather to so many skaters and inspiring people in the game and outside of the game. Also,
wow.
I don't think I would have known the name Bob Burnquist. No offense to Bob Burnquist, had it not been for the original Tony Hawk game. So he could have been a father to so many other skaters' careers. Just want to add that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a big...
I agree.
All these skaters are his sons.
Or daughters.
Dr. Anderson comes off this list because he was more than willing to murder someone else's child for his own ends.
Wow, it was, you know, there was a little more at stake there, I would say.
Doesn't matter.
But
did anybody ask Ellie, would you like to die so you can become a vaccine? I don't believe so.
That's true.
Wasn't she unconscious? Wasn't the?
She was unconscious,
Well, that's even worse. She didn't have the chance to answer.
That's part of the conflict in 2 is that she was never presented with the choice. Other people were making the choices for her, which is a part of what she's so mad about.
I would go back to Jan's arguments for Joel coming off the list of like, well, given all that, you'd hope Abby had learned some crisis and anger management in the time to kind of deal with that, but you know.
Good scientist.
Where do you learn that behavior? Where do you learn that behavior, huh? Where do you learn that behavior?
I learned it from you. I learned about watching you.
Good scientist, bad dad. Maybe not the best dad.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't even a guarantee that pulling her brain out was actually going to accomplish anything. He was just willing to go for it anyway.
Ambitious scientist.
Wow, you're really tearing Dr. Anderson down. You know what? In the end, I think he just wanted to take her brain out. I think that's really what it was. He's
just a sicko.
I think he didn't even know. He's like, well, wait, it'll solve what?
Another example of Dr. Anderson being a bad dad is he purposely kept a zebra in pain to try and turn this into a teaching moment. He could have just freed the zebra at any moment and then go to Abby like, hey, you know, all like wildlife. We got to preserve wildlife and preserve this world. But instead, it was like, I'm going to keep the zebra and it could still die, but I'm going to try and teach my daughter a lesson.
Can we see its brain?
He might have wanted the zebra brain too.
Yeah, that's what he was doing. He just didn't tell Abby that part. Yeah, Dr. Anderson, sorry.
Good
Dr. Anderson. John from Dark Pictures Anthology, A Little Hope. Shitty dad, real bad. Just it's every incarnation bad. That game goes through some of like motifs of like this character in this situation, this character in this situation, this character in this situation. I can't really think of a redeeming version of John in the iterations. He spoilers, he watches his wife get kicked into the pond or the ocean as chained as a witch and kind of watches her drown that way. He burns alive in a house, and as the figurative class dad, at least in the playthroughs I've done, makes really shitty decisions. So yeah, sorry John, coming off the list.
Okay.
What did the Spelunky guy do to get on this list?
Didn't he leave his daughter?
Yeah, to go to the moon. Right? Isn't that the
I'd have
setting
to
for Spelunky 2? Is he leaves behind a book and it's like, we're going to the moon, so
Yeah, I can't remember how the intro of that game plays out. I'd have to pull it up, but yeah, they kind of just left her, right? Doesn't he get kidnapped though? Isn't she trying to save him?
Trying to
I've
save
played
him.
a fair
I
amount
think
of
he
Spelunky 2, and I
didn't
don't
he
even
go to
know.
the. Doesn't he goes to the moon to like, oh, I hear the voices. We got to go to the moon. See you later, and then is trapped there and never comes back. Right? I thought that was the.
That's right.
I thought that was the setup.
I think that's right.
That sounds like some
It's
Goku
kinda-
shit.
A very
Yeah.
irresponsible dad. It sounds like to me.
Yeah, maybe a
Lucky
little.
guy in Goku. Yep. Same
Mhm.
boat.
Hmm.
They're both in Hiffle.
Hmm. All right. Lucky guy comes off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does Piccolo? Okay. We
Yeah.
Dragon Ball fans can agree that Piccolo is a good dad. Does it rate because we've seen this story so many times?
Yeah, and I don't know that it plays out particularly well in that game, which I did not finish, and am doing my damnedest to forget ever happened, because it is not a good game. But yeah, I want to say, well, there's an early tutorial where Piccolo is kind of serving as the tutorial guy, teaching you how to do stuff, teaching Gohan how to do stuff. Past that, I don't know that there's that much. But again, I didn't finish the game because it is fucking sucks. It sucks. The game sucks.
Okay, if we're going by Piccolo in show canon, I don't know what's in the game. Doesn't he leave Gohan like out in the woods?
Yeah,
to basically-
exactly. He's it's his training. He's a tough but fair.
He's got
He's
a little
a
rub some
better
dirt
dad
on it.
than Goku.
He's got a
But-
Hades figure.
But there's no. The redemption doesn't happen quite the same way. But again, I can't really speak to how any of that is portrayed in the game. So like we really would be judging Piccolo by just the story of Dragon Ball Z, which I assume it is at least somewhat faithful to that. But
I put Piccolo on the list to remind everyone that Dragon Ball Z Kakarot came out last year.
yeah,
Good.
it's a bummer.
I know.
I'm fine taking Piccolo off. the list.
Goodbye, Piccolo.
By Piccolo.
There is-
I put on
there is
Yusuf Khan, otherwise known as Abu, to Kamala Khan from Marvel's Avengers, because he's a sweetheart. He's a sweet
Yeah.
man. He's extremely supportive of his daughter. When she was born, he said that she had the most beautiful eyes. When she left and ran away, he kept calling her, just saying, "Everything's going to be okay. Just come home." He went to go get her ice cream when the ship blew up. Ice cream.
Mhm.
What a sweet dad.
He went with her to the weird Avengers Day thing, even though he was probably walking her going like, all right, your weird comic book shit, I guess. Yeah.
He was super supportive because she wrote some fan fiction.
Yeah.
Right, that's how she
And
got
Deep
there.
Brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny that the events of Marvel's Avengers kicks off because you win a fan fiction contest.
Right.
Yep.
So I think he belongs on this list. He's a legit good dad.
Yeah.
That pays off at the end of that story. Like that is one of the few good things about that Avengers game is that story. And
Like
specifically
her arc and
the
her, like,
relationship.
relationship with her dad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
That's good.
did we? So I put a star next to him. Did we want to star Uncle Atul? I forgot.
Yeah, keep it
Yeah, for
low.
now.
We
Yeah, for now.
keep him in the running.
Done. All right, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. All right,
It's got
5
dad
star.
jokes. Oh,
5-star
man.
dad here.
Before we get into the mess that is talking about Arakawa, can we talk about Hot Dad for a second? Are we doing that?
Look, Hot Dad is just constantly presenting you with bones that you can't eat, and you're dying of hunger over and over again. And I think that's what he wants.
Wait,
good music,
this isn't a
but-
Hunger Games game?
No.
No, it's
No.
the Hunger
Games
Games Ensemble.
Oh my god, I was trying to think of like, this isn't Katniss doesn't have a dad in the movie, or PETA doesn't have a dad in this. Okay. Anyway, proceed.
Do you think that was intentional?
100%.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
confused.
Oh yeah.
No. His it's Hot Dad is I don't even think a literal dad. So I think probably
Okay. All right.
off the
Monster Dad?
list. Yeah. Been
All right.
fronting this
All right.
whole time.
Goodbye, Hot Dad.
Okay.
You When you're a hot dad, you can't say you're a hot dad. You have to let other people determine your hotness for you. That's what a true hot dad does.
It's audacious. You're right. You're right.
Like Tony Hawk is a hot dad, but he's not calling himself hot dad.
Yeah, he's got more modesty than that. That's part of being a hot dad, is being humble about it.
What if I told you that he occasionally used as an online handle the term hotter dad?
That I will allow.
Well deserved.
It's like giving yourself a nickname. You can't do it.
I'm gonna add.
Exactly.
There's ready. Tell me.
Oh, I like where you're going with this.
Right from Astro's Playroom.
That's pretty good.
Right.
Pretty good.
Does he even show up in here?
He's on a memory. He's on a memory card. His name is written on. It says Ken on a memory card at the very end.
For the listener,
All right, take him off because he made
father
take him out of there.
I really like
Ken Kutaragi, father of the PlayStation.
Has he been a good dad?
I don't.
To a point.
Didn't he give his child to Mark Cerny?
Not so much.
He gave it to a
Mark Cerny
corporation
is the
that said, "Raise
Piccolo
my
to Ken
child."
Kutaragi's Goku.
Right. After a certain point, he did have his child taken away from him. So.
All right,
Yeah.
Ken. There's a fun little bit of that game. I like that part. The demo.
Hell of a
Sorry,
name.
Ken.
I still think they should have gotten Polygon Man in there somehow, but yes.
Yeah, they did that for PlayStation All Stars, so they already burned the Polygon Man joke on a way worse game.
Way worse game.
All right, we got to
So
talk
what's
about
up with-
Yakuza spoilers.
Yeah, what's up with
Yeah,
Arakawa?
All right, this one's gonna. There's some setup on this one, and so Brad, if you're really sensitive about it, now's the time to cover your precious ears because.
Wait, it's not working.
Yeah,
Take
sorry.
him off.
All right, so Arakawa. Arakawa is the head of the crime family that Ichiban Kasuga, the protagonist of Yakuza 7, is a member of at the beginning of that game. He is a former child actor who used to be part of a touring group of kabuki actors who had a very fucked up childhood, literally watched his dad get assassinated in a fucking Chinese restaurant in Yokohama type shit. Like, the kind of tragic
He
backstory.
walked in on it. Totally.
Yeah.
We walked in on it.
But he never got that Peking duck.
He never got
That's
that duck. So he's a real cool guy, but especially when you meet him later on and when he's an older man, he is smooth as hell. I cannot speak to the George Takei performance much, the English version, but the Japanese version of that character is smooth as fucking hell.
It's pretty good. George is pretty good as the English dub.
Okay. So Arakawa is complicated because he does some really fucked up shit, but it is...
Yes,
it
he
is
sends his son to prison for 18 years. Yes, he shoots his son
Wait,
in the chest.
We have,
But-
okay. You have to go back before that reveal
Yeah.
because Arakawa is like the patriarch figure of that Yakuza group, and there is like the young master who Ichiban is in charge of guarding.
Right.
And there is a flashback.
Arakawa's son.
Yes,
Yes, his actual
Arakawa's son.
Yes, his
and
son.
there's a moment in the game where Arakawa and Ichiban, Arakawa has a flashback and tells Ichiban of a story of a person he was in love with, and they wound up having a child, but because of the warring Yakuza groups, he was in no place to have that child, and I believe the mother would have been murdered because she was the daughter of a Yakuza kingpin, correct?
I think that's correct. There was definitely a thing where she was on the run.
Mm-hmm. And then she had said, "Yo, Arakawa, I'm gonna hide her baby in a locker. It's gonna be over here. Go and get our go get our child."
Yeah.
And
Go
in that
get
flash,
the kid out of the locker.
and when Arakawa gets the set of lockers, he doesn't know which one it's the baby's in, but he hears a baby crying. That instead of trying to get someone that works at the train station to unlock a locker for this child, he proceeds to punch the ever-living crap out of this locker to save a baby.
Literally punches the door off of it, blood flying off of his fist. You hear like bones cracking.
Mm-hmm. And he sustains such a permanent injury that he has to wear a sick-ass black glove for the rest of his life. But he proceeds to break open the locker door and rescue this child who becomes the young master. And the young master, because the baby was in the locker for so long, started suffering from pneumonia, which gave the young master lung
issues, I believe.
Lung issues, yes. So he wound up being a little bit suffering from a lot of health complications as he grew up. But that being said, he still takes Ichiban underneath his wing as the patriarch of this Yakuza, and because Ichiban
cuts off 2 of his fingers to save Ichiban's life. He cuts off 1 of his fingers to save Ichiban, even though it was his first time meeting him.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that is why Kasuga becomes so deeply dedicated to him, because like Kasuga was going to get murdered by some other shitty low-level Yakuza kids, like when he was like 16 or 17. He happened to name drop Arakawa because he knew the name from his reputation around Kamurocho, and expecting nothing. In the end, what ended up happening is Arakawa shows up. He's like, okay, so you're going to kill this kid? Here, I'll tell you what. If I give you a finger, will you let him live? And did not expect that at all. Like no one could have seen that coming, and doesn't even hesitate. Just walks over, gets a knife, whack, does it, and is like, okay, let him go. He'll come with me. And so Kasuga becomes part of this family. He's essentially a grunt, like kind of just runs around doing errands for him. And then this is all in the first few hours of the game, pretty much. It goes some places, so I'll get there. But the defining moment, the thing that sets the whole adventure kind of on its path, is that Arakawa comes to Kasuga at one point and is like, hey, I need you to do me a solid. There's this murder that happened, and I need you to go to prison for it, because it's going to cause some problems if the person who actually killed this person goes to prison. So if you could just do me that solid. And that's a very Yakuza trope of like people going and serving time for crimes that maybe they didn't necessarily commit, but as part of the family honor and all that. So 18 years later, Kasuga gets out of prison, comes back, and he's like, oh, I can't wait to see Arakawa again. I can't wait
to see my dad.
He doesn't, like, Ichiban doesn't care about the outside world. He just cares about seeing Arakawa.
Yeah. And so he gets out, and he is immediately shunned by everyone. Like no one's there to meet him. No one's there to talk to him. He's trying to find out what the fuck is going on. And for a little while, he's just trying to get himself in front of Arakawa to be like, hey, what's up? What's going on? Like, why aren't you, why can't I come back? What's happening? And when he finally manages to make that happen, Arakawa fucking shoots him. He shoots him in the chest. And you think, I mean, obviously he doesn't die because it's Yakuza. No one ever dies from a bullet wound in that game. But nonetheless, he is abandoned in a trash heap in Yokohama and wakes up in a homeless encampment and is like, what the fuck? What is going on?
And he does have like something planted on him that comes back into the plot later, but like, yes. And
so best dad.
So there's a long stretch where you're trying to figure out why, how did you end up here? Why did he leave this piece of evidence on you? Why are you not dead? What's going on there? And so I'm going to leap over about 40 hours of game to get to the part where they finally start to make good on that. The thing you find out, and this is ludicrous, I will just say this right out of the gate. The thing you find out is that Arakawa never intended for you to die. The reason he could not acknowledge you when you came out, and the reason he could not like immediately welcome you back into the family, is because everything around the whole Yakuza landscape had completely changed by the time you got out of prison. The Tojo clan is gone. He has, and the ostensible reason for that is because Arakawa and his family betrayed them and let the Omi Alliance, who is their primary, rival, come in and just sweep over the entire crime world. So in your eyes, he's a traitor. Like, he's done something fucked up. But, like, Kasuga doesn't believe it. He doesn't understand why this has happened. So the reason for all of this... I'm trying to put all the details in order here, but the basic short version of it is that it was all a plan. It was all a ruse. It was all designed as this much larger, grander plan that is supposed to both unite and disband all the existing Yakuza families as part of this much bigger plot involving the governor of Tokyo, the fucking police commissioner, all this other shit. He was essentially pretending to be a traitor, as with explicit direction from both Daigo Dojima, who was the head of the Tojo clan, and the guy who was in charge of the Omi, who I don't remember the name of. And this is all part of a whole thing that involves just dozens of families, all these different people all coming together and essentially pulling the rug out from the Omi in the end. And the reason it all ties back into this piece of evidence that he leaves on your body and why he chooses to leave you in Yokohama. It all ties to these different crime groups within Yokohama. There's too many threads for me to like completely neatly explain here. But the whole point is that he never actually intended for you to die or be hurt, but he could not let go of the artifice, because if he did, the whole plan would just come unraveled. It's fucking ridiculous. And it's not even the most ridiculous plot point anywhere in that game. By the time they start getting around to the whole, like, there is a straight up Prince and the Pauper thing happening somewhere in that plot too.
God. Yeah, they really cram a lot there in that towards the end of just like
they do.
The second locker and everything. Yeah,
there's so much, and we'll talk more about that later, I think, with other Yakuza stuff. But
second locker,
another locker.
But dude, it is all in service of trying to make this plan happen, and he sees you as like, okay, I'm going to let you live, but you can't be here while this is going on, and I'm going to give you just enough for you to try and figure this out on your own.
That's the thing, is like he could have shot him and like put him somewhere completely out of Dodge where you would have not come in to interfere with the plan at all, but it's the fact that he knows how loyal you are, both to him and to the idea of the Yakuza that he set forth, right? Like they're a smaller clan, you spend the first part of that game, you like meet the cigarette lady and talk with her. You shake down a guy selling porn to kids. You guys aren't like the super violent, there's bad seeds in the organization for sure, but you guys are like the idealized version of Yakuza that game so often kind of touts, rather than like the brutal reality of things. But he knows you're so loyal to that he knows that you're going to do the right thing, and he gives you just enough evidence to kind of keep tugging along and pulling on strings and coming back, and he believes in his boy.
And I would just want to say again, for absolute emphasis sake, the plan that he is enacting is one of the stupidest fucking things I have ever encountered in a video game. But the character himself is such a smooth operator and such a chill dude, and the performance is so understated that it actually kind of made me buy into it in a way, because I could totally see how someone like Kasuga would be like, this guy is the coolest motherfucker on the planet. I get it. I see it. And I think that is that goes a long way to making the stupider parts of that plot fly.
Good dad?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I mean, you gotta be, it's a pretty cool dad move to non-lethally shoot somebody.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know if I don't think that. No, I'm gonna hard disagree with that.
Punching the locker open to save a baby.
That's pretty cool.
Who among us has not been shot by our father to ensure that an 18-year plan of subterfuge and complete obliteration of organized crime comes to fruition? Who has not had that?
No.
Okay, we should end Yakuza spoiler talk.
Yeah, that's the end of that.
Okay. Well, if you're just unmuting right now, wow.
We all agree.
Interesting.
Arakawa wins. Good job, everyone.
After all of that and recounting all that, I don't know if he's top 3.
I don't know if he's top 3.
I don't.
Well, I'm the least qualified here probably to even weigh in on this, because I've barely played. Well, I've played most of these games, but it feels like Hades at least is enough of a dick that next to like a Barrett or a Tony Hawk or a Yusuf Khan, I don't know, you tell me. Like, it feels like his dickishness is enough to make him not hang with a group of like very.
He's a dick.
I think he was a real.
Is he a good dad?
Like,
is he?
I mean, but some of these guys are like very earnestly, genuinely good dads, right?
Hades maybe did the best he could with this petulant, entitled little shit.
Yeah, Zag sucks.
Zag kind of sucks.
I am not saying that Zag is a blameless actor in all of this. I think Zag definitely has a little bit of an attitude. But that said, wouldn't you if that was your dad?
Oh, for sure. There is a chicken and egg thing going on between the two of them.
I don't know.
It's a
Hades
tough love sort of scenario.
Human shit, and Zag just like, fucking whatever. Just completely blows it off, and he's trashing the place all the time. And that kid's a little.
It's hell. You can't trash hell any more than it already is.
So I haven't finished Hades, but in the grand scheme of things, are the gods trying to manipulate the events in a very godlike manner, or they genuinely have like Zag's interests in mind? Is Hades trying? I guess my question is does Hades know that the gods are all fickle dicks anyway, and they're just going to toy with him and manipulate him and trying to save him from that, or is he just trying to let him not get what he wants?
They're all extremely fickle, and they do try and manipulate. And there's even a mechanic in the game where you get an option of two different boons, from two individual gods, and you choose one, and then the other gets pissed off for a little while. But Hades has to know that these guys are just in it to just fuck with them. I don't think they're really out to help Zag,
because that was the impression I got from
chaos.
Where I got from where I was at with Hades, having not seen the ending, was like Hades kind of being like, man, you don't even know. You think you know, but you don't know. Like, you want to get out there, but like these guys, they'll do what they want with you to get. I've seen it. I lived it, man. I'm this guy's brother. He sucks. Zeus sucks. Like, Neptune sucks. These guys all just, you know what? Go ahead. See if you can get out of the driveway. See how far you get. And then,
I mean, there's a reading of it to be like Hades knows that Zag can't live on the surface. He knows that he is cursed to a life of hell, and he would rather be, I am keeping you here, and I'm the bad guy, rather than like have Zag come to this realization on its own, which might be misguided. And ultimately, I feel like Hades even admits it's misguided, but he's willing to take that bullet rather than have Zag just be like sulking around in hell, being depressed that he can't live on the surface because of some curse that's out of his control.
Yeah, I think that's understandable, but I think a good dad finds a way to maybe stop his son from going on an ever snowballing quest to fucking obliterate the entire structure of hell just so he can get outside and learn this fucking lesson. I think that's it's a little too tough love for me.
By the time he's got there, he's mastered 7 mythical weapons. Like, look at that. Yeah. He is good to go.
He could have done that at home.
Zag wasn't going to do it any other way. Zag was not going to listen to him.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit. He's an asshole. What he's going to he's going to hang out and stare at himself in the mirror. He's going to just beat off. What are you doing in hell? I don't even know.
Yeah. I mean, he's late to work every day, and Hades taught him a good work ethic. He had him shoveling snow every morning, and sure, it was cold out there, but he learned how to do it.
Yeah.
God. All right. Here's the thing.
At the end of all this, Zagreus knew how to work a can opener. Okay.
You know what? I think, from my perspective, I think Hades and Arakawa both kind of come off this list. It's not that they do things with their children. It's that you can't. At no point did Tony Hawk torment his children to make sure that they learned how to skateboard.
You don't know that.
You don't know that.
We don't know if Riley was born in a locker.
The diapers are made out of grip tape. That's how you got to learn. It's just pure.
Which side?
Ooh.
Get used to it now.
Man, I don't know. Okay, I played through half of that Avengers story. I do agree that Abu is a good dad, but does he really do anything above and beyond of being supportive?
Sometimes that's enough, Ben.
So what?
No, I mean, I totally get that that's sometimes enough, but is that enough to be a winner?
But like, I think so. When we look at the rest of these, I think it's a clear cut case where he is. I think he is doing everything he can in this case because his daughter has become a superhero and like has vanished and is just like. I think he's being supportive as he can in the situation, which is a tough one to take. I don't know how you handle that one. So I feel like
he's worried.
As
he's
supportive
like
as he could be. Yeah, he's worried.
Her
He's
out
like,
on her own to learn.
Just come home. Just come home. I don't know what you got into out there, but just come home. It'll all be fine.
That's the best dad.
You
That
tell me
sounds
how
like the
much
bare
this,
minimum, though.
you tell me how much this
No.
factors into this category, but I would say he has definitely the most dad attire.
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah.
He's full on like plaid shirt and khakis. Like he looks a dad. Like a guy with a Gatling gun on his hand does not. I will say.
Well, so let me ask you this. About Barrett. Did Marlene need a dad or did she need an eco fighter? You know what I'm saying? Where was Barrett the whole time out there planting bombs and doing dangerous? Maybe Marlene needed more of a dad than she needed that
it's
Mako
like a
reactor
Spelunky
exploded.
situation, you know?
Well, what about this? Maybe Barrett may not have been the most present dad for Marlene, but two things. One, he sounds like Macho Man Randy Savage. Two, he wound up becoming a dad to someone that needed it the most. He wound up becoming a father figure to Cloud.
Nah. Cloud is he doesn't need a dad and he doesn't get a dad.
Wow.
He just kind of exists in a weird. I mean,
Barrett
if
taught him
anything-
about family.
If anything, Sephiroth becomes his dad at the end.
Oh boy, that's complicated. I feel like that.
That's his dad.
Maybe
is
maybe
is
Zach needs a
Sephiroth
dad.
a zaddy?
Oh,
I would
for,
lose
for a lot of people,
I would
yes.
lose Barrett
He
before I
lose
would
that.
lose Arakawa or Hades.
I don't even know if I want Arakawa as in the top 3.
I'm not sure if I do either.
I'm the only one? Oh my god. He is literally the person I thought of when I pitched this category.
No, you're not. I get it. I do think that he is a vital jumping off point for these discussions. I just think that like Arakawa's entire plan, his entire thing, any one thing doesn't go right, that whole thing falls the fuck apart. So he's putting. Granted, I think there is something very, like wonderfully dad-like about putting that much faith into the weird chucklehead adoptive son that you put in prison for 18 years to figure all this shit out. But nonetheless, he's taken a real flyer on that one.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong.
But he wasn't wrong to put his faith there. It all worked
He
out.
wasn't wrong. He saw the hero in Ichiban that nobody else saw. That Ichiban didn't even see until he was out of prison.
Okay. Okay.
I think, okay, we're all talking around it, but I think Tony Hawk makes the final 3.
I think
Yeah.
so too.
Yeah.
I kind of thought he would end up coming off, but okay.
What you said about Arakawa is what I thought about Tony Hawk in this category.
Same. Yeah.
He was the third. It was literally the first 3 things on the list I put down were Tony Hawk, Hades, and Arakawa.
Yeah.
I like what I'm hearing about Yusuf Khan. I feel like that's
I think he
He
wins.
sounds
bad
just like
vibes
an
there.
average dad. He does. He
You know
does
what,
the
Ben?
bare
You know what,
minimum.
Ben? That's the best dad. Not all
Yeah.
heroes wear.
A dad who is stable with a minimum of drama and is just there for you sounds pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Not all heroes wear capes, but most dads or good dads wear ill-fitting khakis.
Not all heroes have gun arms.
I'm willing to take Barrett off
I
this
would
list.
chill
Man,
to
I
have
thought
Yusuf be my dad. It'd be
I really
great.
thought Barrett would hang on here.
I would maybe keep Barrett on here over a couple of these other ones. I don't know. So let's talk about A-Tool. That's the one we haven't talked the most
Yeah,
about. Like that's what we haven't gotten into.
Aetol's
It's-
got good dad vibes, but
Not
You know.
technically a dad.
not technically the dad of the main character, and does make you have to cook constantly, and that kind of sucks.
And like, no, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say can't cook his own food, which maybe also makes him more dad vibes. But like, just walking around being like, kind of hungry. You got anything? I'll eat anything. Oh, it's anything left over. Popcorn.
This is going to kind of spoil a little bit of Spiritfarer, but I will also say Spiritfarer is not really a game that is about spoilers for the most part. It doesn't really matter that much, but just if you're sensitive to that sort of thing. The thing with Atul that hit me the most is that as loving and outgoing and friendly and just lovable as that guy is, you can tell that there's something at the center of him that's just like eating at him. Like it's kind of like there's something he is trying to fill a void through, be it through food, through activity, through anything that he is just not able to do. And they never really articulate what that is, but it's not necessarily that important. But I will say the one thing about him and his characterization that kind of hit me the most, not just the similarities to my uncle, but just also kind of the way things went with him, is that every character in that game that you bring to the Everdoor, which is where you send them off to the, their great beyond, you get a moment. You get to you literally bring them on a boat and usher them out there, and then you get one last hug, and it's a really lovely moment each time out. Atul is the only one you don't get that for. He just disappears. There's a point where you get through his quest line, and you've kind of done everything for him that he wants you to do, and he's a little melancholy about it, but not really letting on. And then at a certain point, he just is gone from the boat, and you never really find out what happened to him. And it hit me in a very particular way. A lot of things in that game hit me in a very particular way this year, and that it echoed some things that I felt throughout the year. And that moment really, like, there were about 3 moments in that game that just kind of knocked me on my ass, and that was one of them. So it wasn't really disappointing. It was just kind of like, it was just heavy. It was just a heavy moment. And it's kind of lingered with me past that game. It isn't that I think he has to be in this top 3. I just think that the handling of that character and just sort of the way he is portrayed within all that stuff, like, it pulls at the emotional strings in a lot of different ways, but it is never manipulative or shitty about it. And I appreciated that a lot.
He does do a lot of good woodworking too. Yeah.
Can you say he's a giant frog?
He's a giant frog.
He is. Yeah, all the characters in that game are animals, and obviously they're anthropomorphized. People were joking that that's what happens to all your Animal Crossing villagers when they leave the island; they end up in spirit. But yes, they are also people from Stella, the main character's life.
So okay, I'm gonna make. I'm willing to. It sounds like I am holding up on the Hades and Arakawa front. I am willing to budge on Hades. I want to say a couple more things about Arakawa, and then we'll see what happens. But 2 more notes that are important to remember. 1, he writes Ichiban that really, really nice letter when he's in prison, 2 years in, because Ichiban, like, basically somebody talks shit about Arakawa in jail. He's like, oh, you're with that clan? And Kazuga beats the shit out of him, right? Like, kicks his ass or something.
He adds like 2 more years to his sentence.
Yeah, exactly. Adds 2 more years on his sentence just to defend his fake dad's honor. 2, Arakawa takes him to go get, or I can't remember. He either promises to take him to get the Peking duck, or does actually take him.
He took him there, but the restaurant was closed. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's such a big deal for Arakawa, because that was like the whole thing that he never got to experience with his father. And he saw, even though he didn't think Ichiban Kasuga was his son, he thought of him high enough and held him in such a regard that he was willing to do basically probably one of the most emotionally important things he could do for him with him. And I think that is worth shouting out as good dad behavior. Yeah, we like to joke that he shot him and all this other stuff, but he does do some genuinely nice things for him.
And jokester and his bullets, man.
if it sounds like maybe we can get rid of Hades begrudgingly.
I think it's not that Hades is a uniquely terrible dad. I think he just comes from a family of really uniquely terrible people, and like them, he is capricious and problematic and does dumb shit the way that all the gods do dumb shit.
His dad ate a bunch of his brothers, right? Isn't like Kronos Hades' dad, and Kronos ate a bunch of his children, and they like had to force him out or something. I don't know. I'm a little messy there, but much better dad than his dad.
Yeah,
It's a process.
Yeah, that's right.
all you can
that's
hope
right.
for.
Generational
Everyone
trauma.
got their baggage.
Damn.
I liked what I heard about Hades more than I liked Arakawa. If we're talking about the kind of redemption arc on Hades versus the Arakawa's scheming. I sounds like Arakawa used Ichiban in a way to further, like, wound up kind of having this piece in play, which was Ichiban, in a way that I would say is not necessarily great. Whereas Hades was just maybe trying to work on some family shit, like work their way through a tough family.
I think what you eventually figure out is that yes, he did use Ichiban, but it wasn't for the completely selfish ends that you think he's using him for initially. Like, it's not just about because the Arakawa family at the beginning of that game is like a nothing family. Like, they are like low on the totem pole. No one is particularly interested or threatened by them, but they're around, and Arakawa himself has a little bit of, cachet compared to like other people.
Yeah,
but
big fish, small pond.
Yeah, but they make you think that he made this play specifically just to make the Arakawa family matter. Like, it was all just about like getting the power, because it essentially becomes number 2 in the Omi organization when that stuff happens. But in the end, it wasn't really about that. It was much more about trying to essentially kind of reset the whole crime world of Japan, because there's a lot of stuff involving like the government and their interference and sort of like an increased pressure on the Yakuza in general. And to him, it was about saving what was left of those families and those people, as opposed to just like trying to a naked power grab. It's still selfish. It is still like using someone and not telling them what you're using them for. And I think in his mind, he felt like he had to do that. But it's still kind of fucked up. Like, no matter which way you slice it, it's still fucked up.
How old is Ichiban when he goes to prison?
Like 20 something, I think.
He's
That's
40.
fucked up, man. That's 18 years. He lives his entire life. That's in behind
He likes
bars.
it though. He really likes the food.
No,
does.
the food.
I think to put in perspective,
Yeah.
They 1 day a week. He really likes food. That's right.
Yeah, the one thing a week. Yeah.
he goes into
Well, that's
prison
all right.
when the original Xbox comes out, and it comes out when the Series X is like announced.
That's
So
how
it's like-
people measure time. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Games have come out during that time, so
You missed all the Yakuza
that's,
games.
That's bad. That's a bad thing to do to your kid.
Also, I'm going to say, I want to add this: Hades and Arakawa totally willing to murder their own son. Barrett,
No, Arakawa
No.
is not willing to murder.
inflict harm and shoot their son.
Okay.
Barrett
And send him to jail for 20 years. Yeah.
Barrett is going to his 9 to 5, and his 9 to 5 is being an eco-terrorist. And sometimes you got to stay at work late to put food on the table. But instead of putting food on the table, he's making sure there is a table in the future. God damn it! He's trying to make sure that the world still exists after this. Literally every other word out of his mouth is Marlene. When they get transported to a different world, like after fighting a motorcycle mech demon, maybe with Sephiroth afterwards, he's like, "Well, I gotta go check on Marlene at the bar."
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
weird.
well,
It's almost like he's always calling out to check on his daughter because he's never there with her because he's a bad dad.
Because he's doing the work, Ben.
No.
He's
The other
going
word
to
that's-
work.
The first word out of his mouth is Gaia. So it's
Yeah,
Gaia
he's-
and Marlene. So
Yeah,
father to
Barrett-
earth.
Barrett is doing the work. He is not putting his child in harm's way to do the work for him.
He always makes sure that Marlene is with like a safe guardian figure. So there's also that. And also, if you don't want to think of him as Cloud's like, figurative father, he's also like the father of like that group of ragtag idiots.
It's a lot
We
of
gotta
father
figure
going
this out.
on.
I think we need to go around and give our threes and just kind of figure out what has the least support.
All right.
Okay.
Brad, you want to kick it off with your what you'd pick for 3?
I don't have this. I don't have the strongest. I would say Barrett, Tony Hawk, and Yusuf are the most like pure good dads. I would say, and if that, well, whatever, it's open to interpretation. But those would be my picks.
Tony Hawk, Hades. You guys make this Uncle Atul sound pretty good, so I think I'll make him my third.
Okay.
I'm gonna go Barrett, Yusuf Khan, and Arakawa.
Whoa.
Yep.
I'm gonna my 3 as Barrett, Tony Hawk, and Yusuf Khan.
I'm gonna go with Barrett, Uncle Atul, Tony Hawk.
I guess I'd say Barrett, Tony Hawk, Yusuf Khan.
I like what I've heard about Yusuf Khan. I like Uncle Atul. I like this Hades thing at the end. really, really kind of. So I think I'm gonna go Hades. I like that whole tale. That sounded just for that end bit there. I like that. I like hearing that.
I think we only got one for
I think what ended
Arakawa.
up happening, like, I hate major did Hades spoilers, but like everybody, like, it's a happy ending in hell, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. There was.
You see
only
their
one-
big. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, the last shot of the game before credits is their big family portrait of like you, Persephone, Hades, and Cerberus, and it's very touching.
I have one more. I just reminded me because we were talking about Tsushima and the uncle. Another worse dad, your actual dad, when he's dying from in that war, and it's like instead of like run to you when you're like 8 years old, it's like. What does he say? Like, save me, like help me as you're hiding in the shadows instead of like run, get out of here. Which, bad. Tell your what are you doing? You're like under siege. He's gonna lose. Your kid's gonna.
It fucks with him so much because he spends the whole game being like, "I could have saved my dad." It's like, no, you could not have.
No, you couldn't. No, you couldn't have. Yeah, bad. Okay, anyway, sorry. Back to this list.
Yeah, you're right. There was only one vote for Arakawa, so I feel like by the numbers.
Yeah,
I think
it sounded like Tony Hawk's a lock for sure.
I think Tony Hawk and Barrett had the most consistent.
I still feel like Tony Hawk is just a joke choice, but like,
but it's the best joke choice. It's the only joke choice.
Like
It's the joke choice in this very serious category.
Right. I only voted for it because it's obviously not going anywhere.
If Tony Hawk had not been willing to render himself in that game in his current form, his aged form, I would say you're right. It doesn't work because he's trying to present himself as something, but he presents himself as the dad that he is today.
That's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
And again, father to modern skateboarding. Father to skateboarding.
Yeah,
that's right.
And I mean, like that game, I can't remember if it's the intro to that game or a trailer that they put out, but it's just like all the young skaters in that game talking about like, yeah, I got into skating because of Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Like, I am here now because of this man's vision.
Those video games are sprung directly from his loins.
Yep. That's why they call it Neversoft.
Ha
It took a little bit. Yeah, okay. I get
I thought
it.
that was why they actually called it Neversoft.
Well, that also
I heard some support for Yusuf Khan as well.
Yeah, I think he
support that.
wins. That's I think he wins this category.
He's my winner.
What? He's just a guy. He's just a guy.
That's great, Dad. In these, oh man, yeah,
Okay.
just a dad is
Ben-
awesome.
Ben, maybe one day you'll understand.
Here's the thing. I don't think I can ever aspire to be Tony Hawk. You know, I'm almost 30. I don't think I'll ever be a pro skater. I have to settle into my life with that, right? But I could totally be a Yusuf Khan, and I could totally be a supportive father for my future child. So supportive, in fact, that you encourage them to enter in this fanfic competition that, like, from the offset, it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, let's do it. Like, you want me to read a draft? I'll read a draft. And then when your daughter winds up becoming a superpowered human, you're like, oh, this is a little bit, this is a little zany. But he is never prying. He is never, like, adamant, or he's never demanding with Kamala that like not supportive in that matter.
He kind of insisted that he wanted to go to that like Islamic retreat, but she was like, "Nah, Dad, I don't think so." And he's like, "Whatever."
Yeah,
It'd be nice if you went.
It really sounds like the bare minimum to me. He is your
minimum,
number one
which is
argument
so much more, so much more than other dads, though. Like being real, like his portrayal of a father is like so much more than like so many other dads. Like to have
having children have twisted your guys' brains.
Again, up until a minute ago, one of the contenders on this list literally shot.
Yeah, I mean, Hades literally kills Zag several times too. Like,
Yeah, like he knows that Zagreus is not going to actually die.
Yeah, I'm just saying, there's so much pain and suffering.
Like the Hades stuff, Hades knows that's a stakes-free death. He's just like, oh, you're just going to come back, whatever. Like that's, I don't know that one it carries the same weight.
I think enthusiasm. I think Barrett, Tony Hawk, and Yusuf Khan seem like the three that people were most enthusiastic about, and I'm totally fine with that.
That sounds like the closest to a consensus to me.
Yeah.
I'm cool with it.
Sure.
Okay,
I'm very cool with that.
Last minute objections.
I mean, I think Barrett's out there doing the good work to save the planet, but like, you know, that's putting your career before your kids. You know,
He's letting his toddler or his small child hang out in a bar all day by herself.
I mean, I get it. He wants a better planet. But
for his dog.
Wartime, you know, it's wartime. You know, you gotta do what you gotta.
Gotta make. That's right. That's right. All right. As long as he's not coming home like being like talking about Cloud all the time to Marlene. You're like, you know, he's a good artist. That Cloud kid, he's good at math. he's really good.
All right, Barrett, Tony Hawk, and Yusuf Khan. Are we happy? Last call. Going once. Okay,
lock it in.
Removed.
Shout out to Uncle
Tony Hawk is all the things you guys said Yusuf Khan is, but also he put his son in a video game. And he can do a 900. He can do a 900, and that's cool.
I think Tony Hawk is the best dad, period. This category or otherwise. I think he's just the best dad currently going.
Like, supportive, check. It doesn't make Riley go to an Islamic retreat, check. Like, all these things you're listing, Tony Hawk's got it. And he can do a 900.
What I'll say in Yusef's case is that because of his parentage, Kamala is the best part of what is otherwise an abysmal game.
That's true.
Abysmal is maybe a step higher than I would go, but yeah, I agree that like obviously Kamala Khan is the best part of that game, and I mean everything you've said about him makes him sound very endearing.
Yeah, I think he's not in the game a ton, but like every moment he's there, he's like, he's just being a supportive dad. That's cool.
Yep.
He's supportive of his daughter's dumb fucking fan fiction bullshit.
Yeah, he's like doting and corny in exactly the way you want an endearing dad to be, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I
was playing it up a little bit, but it is refreshing to see like a nice, normal guy. Like, not everything. It could have been a very easy thing to have that game pull the like, oh, she's coming from a like questionable home, and that's why she wants to escape and become an Avenger and blah blah blah. But they, you know, you don't see that a lot in media. Just like having two supportive parents for a child main character or whatever. And I do appreciate that, for the record.
Okay, thank you. I know who I want to win. I know what the funny answer would be, which might be the right answer.
The funny answer is we bring back Tom Nook and call this category and walk away.
Damn it.
My vote is for Tony Hawk.
Same.
He's the dad I have the most experience with of these three in this year, and also in my life. I literally wish Tony Hawk was my dad.
Okay.
Apologies to Alex's actual dad.
Yeah.
I think my dad would understand.
Right now, your
do
dad is
like
sending you a video of him doing a 900.
Yeah. I do like Tony Hawk. Seems like a good guy. Fun on a plane.
Sure.
A very dad-like Twitter account.
Yeah.
It's true.
Shouts do a kickflip at those kids, and they did it, and he gives them headphones, and that's cool. Dadly.
So he's bribing them to follow in his footsteps.
Right.
Is that what's going
He's
on?
supporting their life's journey. You know,
But only if it's in his vision.
Yusef supports one child. Tony Hawk supported an entire generation.
Yeah.
Mm.
When you
It's two children. There's a son.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know,
I-
Yusuf
okay.
Khan, endlessly supportive despite not being a man of enormous means.
900 abilities.
Also, yeah, I would say, is it harder to is it more the dad thing to like have interest in your kid who's completely different than you and has a completely different personality and completely different set of superpowers than maybe you thought you might have, or Tony Hawk, who's like, yeah, I'll support you. You like skateboarding? Let's do this. You want to do skateboarding things? Let's go. It's easy.
would he,
Just knock
would
this
he
one
still
out.
put Riley Hawk in the game if Riley wanted to be an accountant?
Yeah,
No,
Yeah.
no, he won't.
that's right. That's right.
Hmm.
Who's this?
Maybe
Who's
not
this
a playable
benefiting?
character
Who-
at that point.
Whose name is on the box, Ben? Is it Riley's? Who's this benefiting? If Riley's a good character in the game, who
It benefits the
Tony
Hawk,
does.
the Hawk family. You
Mm.
know, that's
Does it say Tony Hawk and family? It says Tony
hey,
Hawk.
who makes? I mean, the Avengers. Oh, such a supportive dad. Oh, sure, honey, go be in the Avengers, the thing that caused the massive destruction of San Francisco, and you're probably gonna
You know
die
that they were
fighting
afraid.
Thanos
They
or
were
whatever.
afraid.
But also, she
Go
runs
fight,
away.
Go have fun fighting MODOK, honey. Just
No,
be home by
doesn't-
11.
He doesn't know where she's gone. He just knows that she's run away. Like he doesn't. It's not until way later in the game that it's
Oh, that's
like,
even worse.
oh,
Go have
you're-
fun with your drugs.
That's
I mean, I would like to think he's
Yeah,
that's
like
a pretty cool
calling
dad
her
thing.
and like talking to the police, or and like she calls home from a phone booth at one point, and doesn't say anything
Yeah.
touching. But yeah, it's not necessarily clear that she has like sprung superpowers and run off as a result of that. She's been hiding it, and so from him, it's like, my daughter ran away.
think
Fuck, and
I wanna
also
say
the
it's
world's
kind
going
of-
nuts over here.
but
Yeah,
he
and towards
knows-
the end, I think he's like, yeah.
All right. I mean, so is anyone else on Team Tony other than me and Alex?
I love Tony Hawk. I want that to be known.
I
But
think that's a funny answer. But my heart's
Yusuf
like,
I don't. I am only going by the things I've heard today. So, except for the real life Tony Hawk stuff, which I don't know that much about. His, what he's like?
Yeah, like it is like, what if he's actually a super commandeering monster to his own family? Like,
what if that comes out like next year? This looks really
dad of the year, Tony Hawk arrested, and yeah,
child abuse.
I just wanted to be a superhero. It made me be a skateboarder. Yeah, I don't know. The only one I think Barrett has to make some hard choices, and I think that's unfortunate for Marley in the dad department.
Yeah.
never
There's
shoots
definitely
Marlene,
a conversation. There's definitely a conversation where Marlene is having with Barrett at like 20 something, where she's like, "I needed a dad, not a warrior. I needed."
Yeah, no, she's
Yeah,
definitely going to need a lot of therapy for this.
You helped
But at
all
least
those
you-
other people.
At least she
Well,
will
I
still live
needed
in a
help.
world where there are therapists.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's right.
I would cast my lot with Yusuf Khan here personally.
It kind of seems like that's where the wind is blowing.
Yep.
Yeah, that seems like the right answer.
Choice.
Tony Hawk is a very close, a razor thin margin.
Mhm.
Yes.
Does he ever cook a big meal for Kamala? Is that ever a thing?
No, he eats her ice cream because
Okay.
it's a special treat.
Yeah,
Aw.
good.
It's
Great.
Hey.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right.
Then he shoots her, but not fatally. That was
Yeah. She's a superhero. She's gets shot so many times. Fine.
All right.
Got robots shooting at her for 15 hours. Got to deal with it. Bad frame rate, game locks up, all this other stuff. She's fine.
Captain America's jaw breaks, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Are we in agreement? Is that our choice?
I think we
Yes.
That is our choice.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Wow.
Hit
That's
control
not
X.
where I thought this would all go when I read that category and this category was proposed. But I'm
Extreme
not disappointed.
That's what I was
And
hoping.
that's what being a dad is like. You roll with it. Sometimes, unexpected things happen and you got to just support it.
Right. All right. Well, here we are. We have our best dad, Yusuf Khan from Marvel's Avengers, followed by other good dads, Tony Hawk, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, and Barrett of Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Yes.
Any of us would be lucky to have one of these as our dad.
Yeah.
top tier.
Right.
All right. Well, we find ourselves at the end of day one of Giant Bomb's 2020 Game of the Year proceedings, and I just feel compelled to point out that as of today, Marvel's Avengers tied for the winningest game at Game of the Year so far.
Hey, don't worry,
All
it'll be
right,
up for
all right,
another
hold on.
category later.
this record.
That is the only thing that game did right.
Oh,
Brad, do we want to read our winners for both categories real quick?
yes. Yeah, I just went down to the best ad.
Okay.
For best looking game is the previous category if you're just joining us somehow, which was Ori and the Will of the Wisps and The Last of Us Part 2 and Microsoft Flight Simulator runners up. So there you have it. The sausage has been made.
We did it.
Do we?
Day one.
What do we got tomorrow?
Are we ready to commit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
God.
think we just did.
Don't show the.
Oh, I'm not going to show it. I'm not going to show it. Don't worry.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you're
Okay.
not showing it. Okay.
Never show it.
Never.
The plan for tomorrow is best music. Have our fun annual listening party.
That's right.
And best multiplayer. So,
All right.
A good year for multiplayer, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
yeah, a necessary year for multiplayer.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
a year in which multiplayer was more important than ever, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, there's your winners for the day. Anybody got any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
Shouts out to the dads on the staff, too.
That's right.
Thanks.
Hey,
Wait, reopen this category. Put me up.
How's everybody feeling about doing this live?
Fine.
It's
fine.
fine.
This is fine.
I'd rather be in a room with all you guys, but we're making do.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody, I haven't been checking too much, but I'm sure everybody just agrees if they were watching it live and said, wow, that what a reasonable and I support this pick.
Sure.
Canonically correct choices. I don't see how anyone could disagree, honestly. So,
No, I really don't.
All
Yeah.
rest assured. The audience is in complete agreement. All right. Well,
But,
that's gonna do it.
well, thanks everybody for watching. Is what I would say. Thanks for
Yeah.
tuning in and watching.
Thanks for joining us. That's it for day one of a Game of the Year 2020. We'll be back with 4 more days of this tomorrow, same time. We'll see you then.